Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 167, Chapter 167, Yin-Yang Heavenly Origin Flame. Chapter 167, Yin-Yang Heavenly Origin Flame. When Baiye heard this, he immediately thought of a certain question and asked, "You fell asleep earlier and I was completely unable to fight back in front of him. Were all because of the chi of 9 yang in his body?" "That's right." "Umph, how despicable. If I hadn't returned to the reincarnation and had to wait for you to grow, I wouldn't have been crushed so miserably with my ability." As little Ling spoke, she was extremely indignant and punched the air with her small fists to vent. "But..." Xiao Ling paused and scratched the hair on her head. "Little knight, why does your Wuji dark flame have that guy's aura? It was wrong." "Wait a minute, Yingluo." After sensing it carefully, Xiao Ling realized that Baiye's body had also been tainted by the aura of a 9th tier master. This almost made it collapse. The reason why it had chosen White Knight had always been because the latter's constitution was the yin spirit constitution that was most suitable for its growth. However, it had changed now. Little Ling almost went berserk. Not good. When Baiye saw Xiao Ling's apocalyptic expression, he subconsciously furrowed his brows. At the same time, he carefully sensed his own body, but he did not find anything wrong. "Not really, yes." Xiao Ling's breath suddenly sank, and her big blue eyes revealed a wise light. "If you can make the Wuji dark flame stronger like this and turn it into the yin-yang heavenly origin flame, then..." Xiao Ling blinked her big blue eyes in disbelief. She looked at Baiye expectantly and said, "Then you'll be able to kill that bad guy soon." Imperial Ninefold. White Knight was very interested when he heard this. "Yes, yes." Xiao Ling nodded her head with all her might. However, she didn't tell Baiye that what she was really looking forward to wasn't Baiye reaching the Imperial 9th stage, but another possibility. Little Yair is still too young. The level she's in contact with has already far exceeded the scope she should bear. Let's just take it one step at a time. Otherwise, she'll feel that the road ahead is endless and that'll be bad. Anyway, I'm not sure yet, so we can wait and see. With this thought in mind, little Ling could not help but reach out her claws and touch Baiye's delicate face. In her days, Xiao Ling could still see the scene of Bai Yeming landing on the ground more than 10 years ago. She had grown so big in the blink of an eye and had even become its new master. "Try out your new fire." After little Ling regained her senses, she rubbed against Baiye's face. "Good suggestion, but do you want to hide first?" Baiye did not forget how. Xiao Ling had almost evaporated. Little Ling immediately shook her head and said, "No, no. I'm prepared. I'll definitely be fine. I want to see this fire, and I also want to take in little Dan Daodu." Baiye, Yingluo. How could she have forgotten? This Xiao Ling was good at everything, but she loved medicinal pills very much. She didn't eat them herself, but she must treasure them and never take them out again. Hurry up, hurry up." Little Spirit urged in her childish voice, but as soon as she finished, she disappeared with a swish. Baiye didn't even need to think to know that Yu Zhekong must have returned. She naturally looked towards the door. Almost at the same time, Yu Zhekong pushed the door open, and a dark, evil aura filled the entire room. Zhekong-Baiye could still hear Yu Qinyi's voice from outside, but it was cut off as soon as it rang in her ears. Bang! Yu Zhekong slammed the door shut. Chapter 168, Chapter 168, Chapter 168 Beauty Trap. Chapter 168, Chapter 168 Beauty Trap. Baiye looked at Yu Zhekong suspiciously, but in that instant, she was drawn into the endless darkness in his eyes, and her heart stopped beating. At this moment, Yu Zhekong was like a poppy flower that had released its evil rage to the extreme. He no longer exuded any seductive aura, but everyone who saw this side of him couldn't help but stop resisting. Baiye only got off the bed after taking a deep breath. "What's wrong?" he asked. Yu Zhekong furrowed his brows when he saw Baiye's bare feet stepping on the icy cold ground. He immediately picked her up from the bed. His actions were so natural that Baiye didn't even have time to react. "Didn't you come down empty-handed?" As Yu Zhekong spoke, he carried Baiye back to the bed and reached out to grab her bare feet. The dark and hostile aura he had when he entered the house naturally dissipated the moment he hugged Baiye. Baiye was not used to this and wanted to pull his leg back. He even tried to break free from Yu Zhekong's embrace and said, "I'm fine, I'm Ying-Ying." Before she could finish her sentence, something was stuffed into her arms. "What is it?" Baiye stopped what she was doing and stared at the bright yellow cloth in her arms. She had a bad feeling that although she had already predicted it, she was not willing to accept it. "Open it and see." As Yu Zhekong spoke, he was already lying down on the bed in satisfaction. His palm was using just the right amount of strength to rub Bai Ye's foot, making her retract it a little, but it still didn't work. During this process, White Knight also saw the contents of the cloth in his arms clearly. Just as she had expected, this was an imperial edict to betroth her to Yu Zhekong. This was something that she had been informed of, but she felt that something was wrong. Tomorrow, your uncle Qin will personally come to pick you up and bring you to the Qin residence. According to the customs of our empire, the emperor will go to the Qin residence tomorrow to read the imperial edict. Yu Zhekong had already explained the situation to him. Obediently stay in the Qin residence and wait for this prince to arrive. No matter what rumors you hear, you are not allowed to have any evil thoughts. Yu Zhekong wasn't worried about anything else, but he was afraid that Bai Ye would do something rash. F***ck. Bai Ye wanted to protest. Good girl. Yu Zhekong cut her off and buried his head in her neck. I'm feeling a little dizzy. Ye help me massage my head. Rub Yingluo. Bai Ye wanted to say, rub your head. Did we lose too much blood? Yu Tuochang said. Bai Ye was about to push Yu Zhekong's head away, but she froze. She suddenly felt that she wasn't a qualified agent. She didn't have a conscience, or else why would she feel guilty and guilty? Yu Zhekong could sense her soft-hearted emotions and knew how to press on. He mumbled in a weak voice, I've taken the pill, but I'm still dizzy. Then, Wan. Bai Ye wanted to say that the pill was definitely not good, and she would get him some medicinal pills that were right. But at this moment, Yu Zhekong lifted his head up from her neck and called out her name in a deep, sexy voice that Bai Ye had never heard before. Bai Ye. Bai Ye subconsciously responded and looked up at the man in front of him. However, when she looked over, she couldn't help but feel a ripple in her heart. She was completely stunned by the pair of dark eyes in front of her that were glistening like poppies in full bloom. It was so beautiful. Chapter 169, Chapter 169, This Prince Likes You. Chapter 169, This Prince Likes You. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Bai Ye would never have known that someone's eyes could be so beautiful. It was like a famous oil painting master, painting the most bright and charming poppy on a pure black canvas, layer by layer in full bloom. This even made Bai Ye subconsciously want to caress those petals that were in full bloom. And so, she did it naturally. Her hands couldn't help but caress Yu Zhekong's eyes seductively. He. Yu Zhekong's deep, drunk voice rang out in her ear. I like you. After a long while, she finally understood what Yu Zhekong meant and realized that her hand was already on his face. Because she had actively approached him, the distance between the two of them was very close. She could hear his breathing. His breath also fell on her face. Such a distance, coupled with that one sentence, caused Shiroya's heart to tremble. However, she instantly came back to her senses and realized that this man seemed to be using his beauty trap on her. Yu Zhekong heaved a sigh of relief after he finished speaking. It was as if something had been released from his body. He focused his gaze on the girl in his arms and said, It's sudden and strange, but I can't be wrong. That's right, he liked this little thing. When the word like was said, Yu Zhekong felt like he had been enlightened, and he understood his own feelings even more clearly. He understood how he felt about the person in front of him. It was just like how he liked to read all kinds of martial arts books when he just became sensible. However, he couldn't let go of it after one look. And his personality had always been to chase after what he liked. He would not bother to hide his desires. If he wanted it, he would take it. He could always get it. He. Yu Zhekong finally understood what he was thinking. He hugged Bai Ye in a relaxed manner and was about to close his eyes to rest. After all, he was really tired. However, Bai Ye's words made him instantly clear-headed. What if I don't like you? As Bai Ye spoke, he even held Yu Zhekong's face, forcing him to continue looking at him. She could tell that Yu Zhekong was being sincere when he said that he liked her. She was sure that she had good judgment. After all, she did not become a secret agent for nothing in her previous life. But Yu Zhekong liked her and treated her well, but that didn't mean she should ignore her own feelings and blindly follow his wishes to accept him, like him, and treat him well. She could treat him as a friend and try her best to repay him for his efforts, but if their personalities were not suitable and she really did not like him as a person, she would not force herself. What? Yu Zhekong's eyes narrowed. The proud and confident Yu Zhekong had never thought about this, because he didn't think that Bai Ye would dislike him. What if I don't like you? Can you let go of the bestowment of marriage? Bai Ye was very direct. She hugged Yu Zhekong's face firmly and stared into his eyes. How bold. Honesty. Serious. Even domineering. Even though her cultivation level was not as high as Yu Zhekong's for the time being, even though Bai Ye's current status was far from being as high as Yu Zhekong's. In fact, no matter how one looked at it, She was still inferior to Yuja Kong. But so what? Can you? Baya did not think that he should be one level lower than Yujukan. Since he had mentioned the so-called like to her, she would seriously talk to him on account of him saving her. If his answer satisfied her, she felt that it was worth a try. After all, this man did have the charm to attract her. Chapter 170, Chapter 170, His Highness is so difficult to deal with. Chapter 170, His Highness is so difficult to deal with. However, if he was not willing to talk about it and wanted to use his dominance to force her to like him, then she would be able to yield and stretch her limits. It was just that there was no need to talk about relationships with her in the future. Since this man didn't even give her the right to choose, she had no choice. I can't, however, Yuja Kong was just as Baya had expected. He carried out his ability in a domineering manner and directly rejected her serious attitude. Sighing in his heart, Shiroya was just about to adjust his state to deal with Yuja Kong. Unless you can make this king let go. Yuja Kong's sexy lips curled up as he spoke with a smile. Hearing this, Baya was slightly startled and muttered to himself for a moment before asking, "What do you mean?" She wasn't sure what Yuja Kong meant by that, but just as she asked, Yuja Kong's arm that was wrapped around her waist suddenly pulled her towards him. Baya only saw a flash before his eyes, and she was pulled onto Yu Ninefold's narrow waist. At the same time, he was suggestively using his long and slender hands to hold her tender butt. An unfamiliar numbing sensation instantly spread from her sensitive buttocks to her nerves, causing Baya's entire body to freeze. Yuja Kong, on the other hand, seemed to be enjoying himself. If that's the case, even if this king doesn't want to stop, it seems like I can't. Yuja Kong said as he toyed with her round earlobe. He couldn't help but lower his head and kiss it lovingly. After this kiss, Yuja Kong couldn't help but bite down on it again. Little thing, if you have the ability to make me stop, then your ability is extraordinary. Hiss. Baya could not help but cry out in pain, but his earlobe was sucked gently by a certain master, as if he loved it very much. Hee 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 hee. Yuja Kong laughed joyfully and even vomited a series of words beside her ear. He was obviously very happy. But what was he so happy about? Baya could not understand at all. She was completely tensed up by this guy's series of actions. However, her mind wasn't in a daze. She was quickly analyzing the feasibility and possibility of Yuja Kong's words. As she tried her best to protect her earlobe, she pulled Yuja Kong away from her ear and asked, "Are you serious?" "Really?" Yuja Kong agreed readily. Baya's eyes narrowed slightly, and her beautiful eyes subconsciously emitted a faint light of scheming. In Yuja Kong's eyes, she looked like a cute, ever-changing cat's eyes. Plus, she was acting all proud and arrogant, ready to fight him. This made him like her even more. This little one, did she really think that she could make him let her go willingly? Little thing. Yuja Kong caressed the neck of the little kitten in his arms, his red eyes staring at the high-spirited kitten in his arms with great interest. He was looking forward to the fight. He would not tell Baya that it had been too long since he had been challenged since he was born. He was tired of the calm environment, but for some reason, he did not leave this boring situation for the time being, Buffy hee hee. Yujukan stared at the unyielding look in Baya's eyes. Don't look forward to the challenge that this little one would bring him. He, Yujukan, would wait. Little thing, you can't run. Chapter 171, Chapter 171, The Eve of the Storm. Chapter 171, The Eve of the Storm. However, the current Baya had no idea that her provocation had completely aroused a certain prince's beastly nature. Even if she knew, she probably would not care too much, because she would not be afraid. Your words are too broad. After all, I'm indeed weaker than you now, and you're still in control of the marriage. How about 10 years as an agreement? If I'm stronger than you by then, you must break off the engagement on your own. During the agreed time, you can't force me to do anything I don't want to do. White Knight raised an objection after he was done with his scheme. She wasn't stupid, she knew that if there weren't some conditions, Yuja Kong's words would be no different from a fart. Because when she was weaker than him, he could do whatever he wanted to her. This was no different from before. As for when she became stronger, would there still be any need for rules? Back then, her fist was the hard truth. 5 years, Yuja Kong replied. He had actually calculated it. Since Baya was still young, he could not do anything to her for the next 3 to 5 years anyway, so he just let her be. When the time comes, hee 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 hee. Yuja Kong caressed her waist gently. He didn't want to wait until then and be tied down by his own words. Even though he didn't think she could beat him in 10 years, and he was confident that she would fall in love with him very soon. However, he, Yuja Kong, wasn't someone who would fight to the death. He had to leave himself a way out. What if this little one didn't mean what he said and insisted on making him wait for 10 years? Wouldn't he be suffering to death then? In fact, 3 to 5 years was already too long for him. Deal, he said. Baya had his own plans, and was satisfied with Yu Kong's open answer. After all, he was serious about it, accepting her protests and giving her the right to choose. Just as Yu Kong had said, Qin Bang had come to the Han residence to pick up Baya early in the morning. In addition, what made Baya feel surprised and relieved was that among the people who welcomed her at the Qin manor, she saw a familiar and kind person, Jifu. Grandpa Ji? Why are you here? White Knight knew that the Prajna village was very far from the imperial city. If she had not participated in the genius selection tournament, she would not have been able to reach the imperial city without using the special teleportation array. When Jifu saw Baya, he also smiled and said, "Our little Yair is getting engaged, so of course I have to come. I have to crawl here. Besides, 9th Wanjai has arranged for Eagle Beast mounts to pick us up." 9th Wanjai arranged this? Baya asked in surprise. That's right. He also picked up many people from the village. Anyway, as long as they can leave, they're all here. Jifu replied with a smile, seemingly in a good mood. In fact, ever since Jifu found out about Baya's ranking on the rookie list and her talent index, he had been in an extremely good mood. However, he also knew that from the moment White Knight's talent was revealed, she would face even more difficulties. Especially when the Imperial City was dangerous. But it didn't matter. It was time for the old guys in the Prajna village to move their bones. What fifth family? This time, they better not play any tricks, or else. He would let them know what it meant to kick an iron plate. Chapter 172, Chapter 172, Chapter 172 QJNPO, Protect Bayet. Chapter 172, Chapter 172 QJNPO, Protect Bayet. Then, under Jifu's lead, Baya first got on the snow lion beast carriage that was specially prepared for him in the Qin Manor's honor guard. Your grandpa Qin is being called by the 9th prince. Let's just wait a little longer. He should be back soon. While they were chatting, Jifu was explaining to Baya when a steady voice came from not far away. Granduncle. See, they're fast. Jifu immediately turned his body and looked behind him happily. Following that, a middle-aged man with a medium build, wearing a shiny black armor, followed Jifu's gaze and appeared in Baya's line of sight. This was a rough man who looked very simple and had an ordinary appearance. The only thing that made Baya see that he was a strong person was his pair of calm and peaceful eyes. They were deeper than ordinary rough men, not at a loss or perplexed. Other than that, Baya could not see anything special about the Qin man who was walking towards him. This must be Yair, you've grown so big in the blink of an eye. Qin Bang walked to Baya in a few steps, and the way he looked at Baya wavered a little when he got close to her. Qin Wan Wan. Baya wanted to get down from the beast carriage to greet Qin. Ben. Qin Mu blocked her shoulder with one hand and pushed her back to the carriage. Sit down, sit down. It's so small, Yingluo is so big now. As Qin Bang spoke, he naturally used his large palm to rub Baya's hair, his voice filled with reminiscence. Baya raised his head slightly and was enveloped by Qin Bang's calm eyes that were filled with tenderness and love. There was a sense of warmth that could even be felt from his eyes to the bottom of her heart. It made her feel that the strange man in front of her was so familiar and kind. Uncle Qin, in Baya's memory, although there was a person called Qin Bang, she had never seen him before. In Baya's memory, Qin Bang had never returned to Prajna village ever since he became an official in the capital. It was not that he did not want to go back, but he simply did not have the time. As the number one expert in the dynasty, he had more than half of the things to deal with and complete. Therefore, in most people's eyes, Qin Bang was a mysterious person. Therefore, the moment he appeared, the guards of the Han residence who had been quietly standing guard outside the door all became excited. Mr. Qin. It was Mr. Qin. Ao, F***ck, Ying Ying is so excited. No, that's not right. I didn't see Mr. Qin just now, why did he come out of the mansion? Are you stupid? If Mr. Qin didn't want you to see him, how could small figures like us get to see him? It's all thanks to Miss Bai that we're able to meet Mr. Qin today. Mr. Qin. Mr. Qin. The crowd was instantly filled with Qin Mo's brainless fans. Even though the Han family head, Han Zhen, tried his best to calm everyone down, no one could. Let's go, we'll head back first. Qin Bang was clearly used to such a scene. He only used his palm to gently carry Baya into the beast carriage and informed him. After Baya nodded, Qin Mu invited Jifu into the carriage. He then put down the curtain and stepped onto the driver's seat. Arg. No way. Look, Mr. Qin is driving himself. This swan and I, this swan and I. Oh my god. This. It seems like even His Majesty has never enjoyed it before. Oh my god. I didn't expect Mr. Qin to value Miss Bai so much. Not only did he come to pick her up personally, but he also drove Miss Bai personally. This, 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 this. The scene caused an uproar in the stadium. Even the influential people and people from the prestigious families who were watching in the distance were shocked. Chapter 173, Chapter 173, Chapter 173 The Dark Storm. Chapter 173, Chapter 173 The Dark Storm. Qin Ban. As the number one expert of the dynasty, who had never been shaken since the rise of the dynasty in recent years, and also an extraordinary man from the Heaven's Will Mansion, his position had always been unshakable. As an expert, Qin Ban didn't even need to kneel in front of Emperor Yu Qinyi. Therefore, apart from being elusive, he was also high and mighty. None of the nobles in the imperial city had ever seen Qin Ban bow to anyone other than Yu Qinyi. But it was such a strong person. He's announcing to the world that he's definitely going to protect Bai Ye. If anyone has any other thoughts about Bai Ye, don't blame him for being impolite, right? Mu Shannon, the head of the Mu family, couldn't help but ask himself in surprise as he sipped the tea in his tea bowl. As expected of Mr. Qin, you're always so domineering and simple. Mu Yunzhen, who had interacted with Bai Ye before, immediately turned into a fan of Qin Mo, his eyes sparkling. Sai, the head of the Yun family, Yun Chongming, sighed silently. Father, you don't have to worry too much. Bai Ye isn't the kind of girl who is petty. She won't take it to heart. Yun Yi, who knew the inside story, comforted. Yun Chongming shook his head. Even if she doesn't take it to heart, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for the Yun family to gain her deep trust in the future. Besides, there's still the ninth prince. He's probably starting to take revenge. Yun Yi, haha, he didn't expect that Yu Zhekong, who was just joking around with them not long ago, would suddenly turn hostile. The Yun family had a lot of businesses, but in just a few days, many of them were destroyed. However, compared to all the businesses under the Crown Prince's residence being merged, the Yun family was considered super good. The father and son of the Yun family were speechless for a moment. They couldn't say anything, so they could only silently bear the mistake made by their idiotic mistress and the process of bleeding. When the fifth family received the news, there was also a great uproar. Let's do it according to plan. It's just Qinpo. The ninth prince is a smart man. He will understand the benefits that our fifth family will bring to him as the leader of the four great families of the imperial city. Daiwu Qingshang, the head of the Daiwu family, finally said with certainty. Yes. The entire fifth clan, who had received the order, now felt that their patriarch's decision was the most heroic. As such, among the four great families of the imperial city, other than the Lian family, which had always kept a low profile, the family heads of the other three great families had all appeared near the Han residence. They would also secretly follow the Qin residence's honor guards and change their positions to head to the Qin residence. Among them, there were many influential people who had decided to attend the engagement banquet organized by the Qin manor. However, there were still many people who decided not to go. After all, the fifth shop had released a lot of rumors. Furthermore, the all-knowing scholars who claimed to know everything in the imperial city had already revealed that the daughter of the fifth family, the number one socialite of the imperial city, Daiwu Kinga, had left the mansion early this morning and had appeared near the ninth prince's mansion. We're here under such a dark storm. Bai Ye, who didn't know the inside story, had safely arrived at Qin Manor under Qin Ban's escort. Let's go, let's get off the car. Jifu was the first to get out of the beast carriage, and then he lifted the curtain for Bai Ye and reached out to help him get off the carriage. However, Bai Ye himself had already jumped out of the car. And her jump made Qin Mu's eyes light up when he was about to go forward to support her. Chapter 174, Chapter 174, The Engagement Banquet, 1. Chapter 174, The Engagement Banquet, 1. Although Bai Ye's landing was a simple action, at best, it could only be considered vigorous, and did not seem very strange to others. There were even many onlookers standing in the fifth shop who could not help but stare blankly. Tisk 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 tisk, this is the legendary number one talent, White Knight? She's so vulgar, and she's the imperial consort of the 9th prince bestowed by His Majesty. It looks like it? What's all this about? Miss Daiwokinga should be the most worthy of the 9th prince. Our 9th Wanjai is so wise and divine, and he was the one who detonated the strange phenomenon that day. He's the protector of our Tianqian dynasty, how can he marry a country bumpkin like her? SHH. You're questioning His Majesty's decision, be careful or you'll be dragged away to be beheaded. Bai Yes' hearing was good, so even though the environment was noisy, she could still clearly hear the various criticism mixed in with the various voices of people, as well as the praise for Daiwokinga. Bai Ye listened for a while before he finally understood. Most people in the imperial city had always thought highly of Yu Zhekong and Daiwokinga. They all thought that Daiwokinga was more suitable to be the 9th princess consort. Don't pay attention to these gossips. They don't have anything better to do. They don't have the final say in what the 9th prince wants to choose. Jifu, who was at the side, saw that Bai Yes' attention was on him and that he was obviously talking among the crowd, so he immediately went up and comforted him. That's right, let's enter the residence. Qinban put away the light in his eyes and reached out to hold Bai Yes' hand as he spoke. Bai Ye naturally did not have any objections. And she was not in the mood to care about this gossip. She was only curious about who Daiwokinga was. She sounded very beautiful and not bad. If he was as good as his reputation, Bai Ye couldn't understand why Yu Zhekong would give up such a beautiful woman and come all the way here to find her. Was he really a pedophile? That's enough. Are you all satisfied? Han Yu, who had accompanied Yu Zhekong to watch Bai Ye's journey to the Qin manor, patted Yu Zhekong's shoulder when he saw Bai Ye enter the manor. These people are so noisy. Of course, Yu Zhekong wasn't satisfied. Han Yu, Yingluo, UB asterisk starred. There's always more freedom of speech during the Qingming festival in the imperial city. What's wrong with this bunch of bystanders gossiping? They didn't know the inside story, so what was there to care about? And what's with senior brother Qin's actions? Wasn't it good that he didn't have to drive the carriage back to the residence? Pulling and tugging, what is this? Yu Zhekong even expressed that he was the most dissatisfied with this. Han Yu, he junior martial brother Qin is taking care of his daughter like a father, alright? Why does it sound so dirty when it comes to you? Is this really good? Forget it. After today, I'll send Ye to the Heavens Will Mansion. I'll go back and continue my cultivation. Yu Zhekong was still worried. He glared at the entrance of the Qin residence for a moment before turning around and leaving. Little junior brother, slow down, wait for me. Han Yu couldn't quite catch up. Yu Zhekong, on the other hand, had already returned to the prince's residence. In fact, if it wasn't for the fact that he had to bring the honor guards from the prince's mansion to show that he was satisfied and valued this marriage, he really wouldn't be willing to run away like this. Just now, he wanted to directly take back his hand from Qinbang's hands. Your Highness. Zifeng, who was helping Yu Zhekong change his clothes, stepped forward. Move quickly, Yu Zhekong urged impatiently. By the time Han Yu caught up to him, Yu Zhekong had already changed into his court attire and was riding on his exclusive dragon steed. He led the royal family's honor guards and headed towards the Qin residence. Chapter 175, Chapter 175, The Engagement Banquet, 2. Chapter 175, The Engagement Banquet, 2. All parties had also received reports on the exact scale of the royal family's honor guards. What? Dragon Knight? Did Nine Hall His Highness summon his Dragon Knight? Dai Wuqing, the head of the Daiwu clan, was still a little shocked, but he immediately asked, where is Kinga? I'm afraid she won't be able to stop the 9th prince. That's right. However, King Gu has already taken the second step and is heading straight for the Qin residence. I hope she can make it in time. All right. Dai Wuqing Shang nodded, expressing his satisfaction with Dai Wuqing's decisiveness. Let's go as well. We can't let Kinga fight alone. I didn't expect the 9th Highness to value this White Knight so much. It seems that we need to change some of our strategies. While they were talking, Dai Wuqing Shang had already brought the experts of the 5th family and rushed to the Qin manor at the fastest speed possible. They had to hurry because the speed of the dragon riders was too fast. Even though Yu Zhekong had already slowed down to maintain order, the moment the dragon riders appeared. Roar! A dragon's roar resounded through the clear sky, and all the beast riding mounts in the honor guards of the 9th prince's mansion gathered their spirit and followed at their fastest speed. No one dared to fall behind, and no one dared to make a sound. He didn't even dare to breathe. All the beasts took a deep breath and followed behind the flood dragon cavalry with all their might. The team was neat and fast as lightning. This was the residence of the 9th prince's dragon cavalry. Even though not the entire team was made up of the descendants of the dragon race, as long as the dragon knight in the lead roared, the group of beasts would be able to burst out with extraordinary speed. They were the fastest in the Tianqian dynasty. His surprise attack ability was the strongest. The battle team with the fiercest explosive combat power. And now, Suanji. This kid, he even used the Longqi army as an honor guard, is he trying to challenge me? Yu Qinyi, who was just about to head to the Qin residence, heard a dragon's roar as soon as he stepped out of the palace. Without even asking, Yu Qinyi knew who the voice came from. After all, the only beast mount in the Tianqian dynasty that had the bloodline of the dragon race and had the most explosive potential was Yu Zhekong's mount, the White Flood Dragon. Ahem. Jun Wuming stopped talking. He had already tried to persuade Yu Qinyi, but he had to go along with this kid's personality. Why did he have to bring up the idea of getting another wife? Wasn't he just looking for trouble? Let's go, he said. Yu Qinyi laughed bitterly when he did not get a response. Hurry up, he urged his attendant. For a moment, the entire imperial city was in a state of frenzy as everyone rushed to the Qin residence. If it wasn't for the imperial city's explicit rule that beast mounts were not allowed to fly in the air, everyone would probably be flying by now. But even so, he still couldn't catch up to Wan. Yu Zhekong's honor guard had already arrived at the Qin residence with a momentum that shook the entire city. At this moment, Bai Ye, who had just entered the house and was getting dressed, had not even had the time to take a sip of tea. Anku, what's that sound? Bai Ye was extremely curious about the dragon's might that had passed through the Qin manor. From the sound, it seems to be the roar of the 9th Prince's dragon cavalry, the White Flood Dragon. The one in charge of dressing Bai Ye up was Qin Bang's wife, Gu Ruo. Her appearance was not astonishing, and could only be considered dignified. Dragon Knight. White Knight immediately thought of the legendary dragon. Knock, 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 knock. At this time, there was a slightly urgent knock on the door, followed by Jifu's voice urging, "Little Ruo, be quick. His Highness Ju is here." Chapter 176, Chapter 176, The Engagement Banquet, 3. Chapter 176, The Engagement Banquet, 3. On the way to the Qin Manor. Eldest Miss, from the distance of the sound, the 9th Prince has arrived at the Qin Manor. Daiwo Minkan, who was in charge of the investigation of the Daiwo clan, turned his head and quickly reported in front of a beast-drawn carriage. Speed up. We must reach the Qin residence before the engagement ceremony. Chen Ning's reply quickly came from the carriage. This voice sounded a little ethereal, faintly revealing a taste of otherworldliness. It made people involuntarily feel that the person sitting in this carriage must be a peerless beauty. But Bayan, Daiwo Minkan, who was reporting, was obviously in a difficult position. However, a voice came out from the carriage again. If we really can't speed it up, immediately feed the Pegasus beasts with the mania pill. Mania pill. When the 5th scout heard this, he was shocked. This was because once this pill was given to a Pegasus, the Pegasus would definitely be crippled. However, Pegasus beasts were magical beasts of the 3rd rank, and were also one of the most docile magical beasts of the 3rd rank. Because their characters were much more docile than other magical beasts, and they were all white, their appearance was particularly likable, and their speed was also good, so they had always been the darling of the circle of officials and nobles in the imperial city. They were usually priceless existences. Even a large family like the 5th family only had a total of 20 Pegasus beasts, and they were using 4 here. If all 4 of them were fed with the manic pill, the loss would be too great. Not bad. The female voice in the car replied without a doubt, as if such a huge loss was not a problem for her at all. But Kinkin's subordinate doesn't have any manic pills on hand. If I rush back to the clan to get them, I'm afraid it'll be too late. Moreover, the clan might not have any in stock. What should I do? Daiwo Minkan was put in a difficult position again. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a fair and delicate hand reached out from the carriage. That hand was still holding a small porcelain bottle. 4 pills. Feed them. Minkan was a little surprised. He reached out and took the small porcelain bottle. At the same time, he opened it in disbelief and found that there were indeed 4 manic pills inside. It was obvious that they had been prepared in advance. Yes, young miss. Daiwo Minkan clenched the porcelain bottle tightly and replied. However, he was extremely shocked in his heart. This was because, not to mention the fact that he had anticipated the unexpected situation and was able to make the decision to abandon the 4 Pegasus beasts, just the means by which he had obtained these 4 mania pills was not something that ordinary people could do. After all, the mania pill was a level 1 plus medicinal pill. A level 4 alchemist was an alchemist used by the dynasty. Therefore, the pills refined by a level 4 alchemist were usually controlled by the dynasty. Ordinary people, even those from influential families, such as the 5th family's Lord Patriarch, could not get their hands on them. However, their young miss had easily obtained 4 level 4 mania pills. How did the young miss do it? Dai Wominkin was still thinking about the Pegasus as he fed it the elixir. He could not help but mumble to himself, could it be that eldest miss is already a level 2 alchemist, and that's why she is appreciated by the level 4 alchemist master, Lord Yufu. When Dai Wominkin thought of this, he was so shocked that his heart was about to jump out of his chest. If that's the case, then it's no wonder that the family head would spare no effort to help the eldest miss complete this matter. With the manic pill being fed, the fifth family's people sped up. The engagement banquet at the Qin residence was also about to begin. This was because Baya had already finished dressing up and walked out to her room. Chapter 177, Chapter 177, The Engagement Banquet, 4. Chapter 177, The Engagement Banquet, 4. Creak, the door was opened. Yu Zhekong, who was already waiting outside the door, looked up and saw Baya walking out of the house. He couldn't take his eyes off her. Because the Tianqian dynasty was very open-minded, and this was only a simple engagement ceremony, Baya didn't need to cover his face, so Yu Zhekong could clearly see his beautiful face. Yu Zhekong's breathing stopped. She was different from Baya, who usually had no makeup on and looked slightly childish. At this time, her eyebrows were curved, like a long green mountain, revealing a soft and gentle beauty. This gentleness invisibly increased her feminine gentleness and reduced her original childishness. In addition to Baya's delicate facial features and a pair of bottomless eyes that faintly revealed a dark aura, it instantly made her, who originally looked like a young girl, have the tender and beautiful feeling of a young girl in full bloom. Yee. Yu Zhekong collected his thoughts and quickened his pace, walking up to Baya in an instant. It was only when he got closer that Yu Zhekong noticed that Baya was wearing the 9th princess consort's court dress that he had ordered someone to make. The dark purple golden imperial concubine dress made his petite figure look even more beautiful and noble, like the purple clouds from the east, both beautiful and noble. What? Baya, who had just stepped out of the door, was called to a stop. She had just moved her eyes away from a certain prince's figure when she saw the approaching prince. Although this was not the first time he had seen him in formal attire, Baya could not help but feel that the clothes of the Tianqian dynasty were really good. Not only were they exquisite, but they were also very fitting. Yu Zhekong's uniform perfectly showed off his muscular chest, long legs, and slender waist. Every time White Knight saw this, he could not help but take a few more glances. It's so beautiful, Yu Zhekong, who was getting closer, grabbed hold of Baya's hand. Baya's slightly raised chin was smooth and soft to the touch, and his heart softened even more. Baya blinked in confusion. As she did not like the smell of those sticky things, she had only asked Aunt Gu to draw her eyebrows and did not seem to have done anything else, but why did this guy look so stunned at first sight? That blink of an eye made Yu Zhekong, who was right in front of him, feel his heart being moved by her long, curly eyelashes. It made his heart itch, and he really liked it. Yu Zhekong couldn't help but lean over and plant a soft kiss on Baya's long eyelashes. His thumb couldn't help but caress her smooth jaw a few times. This bang scene made Han Yu, who had followed behind, speechless again. He covered his face and muttered to himself, "Don't look at me when I'm being indecent, don't look at me when I'm being indecent." On the other hand, Gu Ruo, who had walked out of her room at the same time, nodded with a smile on her face. There was even a hint of mischief in her eyes. Baya, who was sensitive enough, caught Gu Ruo's teasing gaze. She was not used to this sudden kiss and was about to push it away when Yu Zhekong stood up and let go of her jaw. "Let's go to the front hall." Gu Ruo then came forward to help Baya to the banquet hall. Seeing this, Yu Zhekong stepped forward and grabbed Baya's hand before Gu Ruo could hold it. "There's no need to trouble you, senior sister-in-law." He looked as if he was afraid that his wife would be snatched away. Chapter 178, Chapter 178, The Engagement Banquet, 5. Chapter 178, The Engagement Banquet, 5. Gu Ruo couldn't help but chuckle at the sight. Baya was a little speechless and wanted to pull his hand back. Even though she didn't know much about etiquette, at least she knew that she and Yu Zhekong would have to separate into the banquet hall before the engagement. Junior brother, Qian. Han Shu, who had followed him, also wanted to persuade him. However, Yu Zhekong pretended that he didn't see anything. He was still holding on tightly to the thing that was trying to slip away from his hand. "Let's go, the auspicious time is almost here. Ninth Highness, it's better for this minister's wife to do it." After Gu Ruo was done laughing, she reached out to hold Baya's arm. "You don't have to be in a hurry. Why don't you wait in the front hall first?" Yu Zhekong gripped Baya's soft hand tightly, obviously unwilling to let go just like that. Especially when the image of Qin Po holding Baya's hand kept replaying in his mind. This made him even more uncomfortable, and he wanted to hold this little hand just like that. However, He had asked about the proper etiquette beforehand, so he knew it clearly in his heart. However, he really didn't want to let go of Han Han. "I'll hold your hand first, I'll let go when we reach the door." Yu Zhekong quickly made his decision. With that, he dragged Baya away without hesitation. He was trying to say that this was the biggest compromise he could make, and there was no way he could persuade him to let go. Han Yu, he. He was once again speechless. He had realized that ever since Yu Zhekong had taken fancy to the new junior sister, his junior brother would no longer be the calm and wise prince he used to be. When it came to junior sister, he would only become the willful and unbridled Yu Zhekong of the Heaven's Will Mansion. "Let's go, little Yu." Gu Ruo smiled as she followed the young fiancé and fiancé. However, Baya still wanted to pull her hand back. She opened her mouth to protest and wanted to ask Yu Zhuchang to wait in the front hall, but she was about to speak. "Did you hear the beast roar just now?" Yu Zhekong immediately changed the topic. After that, no matter what Baya said, he could directly change the topic and even hold her hand tighter and tighter. This made Baya lose his temper and could not be bothered to care anymore. Just as Baya and Yu Zhekong were about to reach the front hall, a loud and clear voice was heard, "The emperor has arrived." Yu Qinyi had finally arrived. This was the first time he had attended a banquet without being the finale. What? Did I see wrongly? Did the emperor really enter the Qin manor? However, Yingluo wasn't at the right time yet, right? It wasn't that he didn't want to continue acting like an emperor, but he was afraid that his son would start the engagement ceremony without waiting for him. As for Yu Qinyi's special early appearance, everyone inside and outside the banquet hall, and even inside and outside the Qin residence, was in an uproar. What? Did I see wrongly? Did the emperor really enter the Qin manor? However, Yingluo wasn't at the right time yet, right? It seems that the music hasn't started yet, and the ninth prince and the future ninth princess consort haven't appeared yet, right? He hasn't appeared yet. I've been listening to them. If they've already appeared, the officials would have loudly announced it, but there's been no movement. Heavens. So. The Emoer had arrived in advance and was waiting for the ninth prince and the future ninth princess consort? Then how much does His Majesty, Suanji, value these two? The discussions inside and outside the Qin manor, as well as the orderly salutations of the influential officials in the banquet hall, confirmed that their emperor of the Tianqian dynasty had really arrived at the Qin manor in advance for the sake of the soon-to-be engagement between the ninth prince and the future ninth princess consort. This was truly unbelievable. Chapter 179, Chapter 179, The Engagement Banquet, 6. Chapter 179, The Engagement Banquet, 6. After all, the so-called engagement ceremony was originally just a ceremony for the male party to establish an alliance with the female party's clan. Usually, the male party only needed to bring the marriage contract to the female party's clan to announce the agreement of the engagement and attend the engagement banquet. However, not only did Yu Qinyi and the emperor attend the wedding, but they had also arrived early. This made Dai Wominkan, who had just arrived at the entrance of the Qin manor, hesitate. He looked at the carriage that had just come to a stop and said, "Eldest young Miss Zhen. Hand over the invitation and enter the residence." The sound of a flute immediately came from the carriage. As soon as the voice fell, a woman in a light purple dress and a veiled hat stepped out of the carriage. Although her face couldn't be seen clearly, every movement of the woman from the moment she lifted the curtain to the moment she landed on the ground revealed an elegance that was difficult to ignore. The crowd, which had been boisterous because of Yu Qinyi's early arrival, instantly fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the beautiful woman in front of them in silence. Even though she was wearing a curtained hat, they could still feel the beauty from her elegant movements. It was not until Dai Wokinga stepped into the Qin residence that everyone suddenly came back to their senses. This is the fifth family's Wufu's Miss Kinga. It can't be wrong. That beast-drawn carriage had the fifth family's sword of light emblem. As expected of the number one socialite of the imperial city, she's truly beautiful. Oh my god, Yingluo, did you guys see what she did? Isn't she more elegant than a fairy? That's right. Miss Dai Wokinga is indeed the most suitable candidate to be the ninth princess consort. After all, the ninth prince is an outstanding man. How can he not have a beautiful and noble princess consort? This is not suitable. For a moment, the onlookers outside the Qin manor were almost one-sided as they praised Dai Wokinga and hoped that she would become the ninth princess consort. The imperial decree regarding the identity of the main consort has already been issued. This is really too unfair for Miss Kinga. Sigh. This is really not appropriate. Could it be that the newly promoted number one genius, Baya, is more beautiful than Miss Kinga? That's absolutely impossible. No matter how beautiful a 15-year-old girl is, she's still not fully grown. Moreover, it was said that as long as Miss Kinga didn't wear a curtained hat on the street, ordinary people would be dazed by her beauty, regardless of gender. Sigh, Yingluo's talent might not be as good as Miss Shiroya's. Nonsense. Miss Kinga was known as the most talented alchemist in the dynasty. Her cultivation might not be as good as Bai Yes, but her talent in refining medicine was definitely top-notch. Besides, alchemists were so noble. Therefore, in comparison, Miss Kinga was the noblest and most talented. She should be the main consort. The discussion at the venue was sky-high. And Daiwo Kinga was riding on this popularity as he walked towards the banquet hall of the Qin residence. At the same time, Bai Ye walked into the banquet hall with Guo Ruo's support. Miss Bai has arrived. As the ceremonial official's voice settled, all the nobles and distinguished families in the hall turned their eyes to Bai Ye, who walked in from the door with the backlight. Being stared at by such a large group of powerful and influential people, an ordinary person would definitely not be able to bear it. Even if there was someone supporting him, he would definitely be flustered and his eyes would be so weak that they would lose their luster. Bai Ye, who took a step into the banquet hall, raised his eyes and looked at the crowd the moment he was the focus of the crowd. He didn't panic. It didn't float, it didn't get dry. It was only for an instant. Everyone was mesmerized by his eyes. Chapter 180, Chapter 180, The Engagement Banquet, 7. Chapter 180, The Engagement Banquet, 7. At this moment, everyone present could clearly feel that the lady in front of them was looking at them. Some of them subconsciously wanted to find some other emotion in the quiet eyes in front of them. However, they were all disappointed because they couldn't see through this pair of eyes. Even though they knew a lot about the inside story and people's hearts, they all felt helpless in front of the owner of the eyes. Tisk, 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 this little girl is indeed not ordinary. She can actually make her eyes absolutely still. This determination and adaptability are not bad. Jun Wuming, who was sitting beside Yu Qianyi, couldn't help but praise him. However, Jun Wuming didn't know that to Bai Ye, this was just a subconscious glance when she attended big events. He didn't put so much thought into it. It's indeed not bad. Yu Zhenzhen nodded in approval. By fixing her left and right eyes in different positions, not only can she look back at everyone, but no one can see through her thoughts. She's a child who can hold her ground. Yu Qianyi had originally wanted Yu Zhekong to marry Daiwo Kinga as well, mainly because he was worried that Bai Ye's rural background might be able to be an extraordinary expert, but he would not be able to be a dignified princess. However, from the current situation, this child's social potential was also very good. At this time, the influential people in the audience who had recovered their senses subconsciously nodded and praised. They had basically been conquered by Bai Ye's gaze. Your Highness, the ninth prince, and Miss Bai Ye of the Bai family, please come to the main hall. The observant officials also took advantage of the harmonious atmosphere to start preparing for the engagement. Yu Zhekong, who had been waiting for this moment, quickly walked to Bai Ye's side. However, at this moment, Bai Ye saw a servant of the Qin residence whisper something into Qin Ban's ear. The latter's expression changed slightly. Today's birthday. At this time, the official of rites had already roughly told them Yu Zhuchang and Bai Ye's birthday and said that they were a match made in heaven. Therefore, the emperor has decreed a marriage. After the rites official finished his long speech, he was about to ask Yu Zhuchang to read out the marriage decree. Once this decree was announced, it would be known to the world. In other words, Bai Ye's identity as the future ninth princess consort had changed from a secret discussion to a reality that couldn't be more real. This was the moment. Kinga greets the emperor and the lords. Daiwo Kinga's voice was elegant and ethereal, as if it did not belong to the mortal world. It broke the festive atmosphere and directly attacked everyone's heart. Immediately after, Daiwo Kinga, who had taken off her curtained hat, walked in from behind Bai Ye and stood directly beside him without avoiding him. Bai Ye turned his head and saw a beautiful side profile. Her red lips were like peonies, her nose was like a jade carving, her long eyelashes were like feather fans, and her brows were like ink paintings. She was so beautiful that she was elegant and quiet. Miss Bai, Daiwo Kinga, who had just finished bowing, followed Bai Ye's line of sight and looked over indifferently. With this appearance and demeanor, it was as if Bai Ye was an ant that she did not put in her eyes at all. And what she said next clearly expressed Daiwo Kinga's disdain for Bai Ye. Daiwo Kinga, like the ninth prince. You, back out. Daiwo Kinga's words were straightforward. The bold words immediately set off a huge uproar in the banquet hall. Chapter 181, Chapter 181, Chapter 181 Get Lost. Chapter 181, Chapter 181 Get Lost. No one had expected Daiwo Kinga to be so direct and to provoke Bai Ye in this engagement banquet. It could even be said to be an insult. Miss Bai, please leave. Daiwo Kinga, however, seemed to be afraid that someone couldn't hear her clearly and emphasized once again. The certainty and even the arrogance in her tone were not concealed at all. And this Daiwo Kinga was obviously far from the image she usually left for people, the image of being aloof from the world and independent of the world. Therefore, many people in the hall were stunned when they heard this. See. Only Yun Fang, who was almost hidden by the crowd, suddenly had a glimmer of hope in his heart, but he quickly suppressed it. Even though he liked Baya and wanted to pursue her, he was not afraid of her. However, if the opportunity he wanted to pursue was built on the foundation of White Knight being hurt, he was not willing to. How can this be? Gu Changhe, who had not left the residence of Yun, was also shocked and angered by the scene. However, he felt a sense of fear in his heart. As someone who had some common sense, he knew very well that there was a special duel in the Tianqian dynasty. And Daiwo Kinga's appearance seemed to be based on this and that duel routine in his heart, so. It can't be. Gu Changhe looked at the center of the field in a panic, but he was relieved to see that Zhu Wanjai had walked out and stood in front of Baiye. Get lost, he said. Yu Zhekong's deep voice clearly expressed his rejection of Daiwo Kinga. However, Daiwo Kinga, who had been reproached and rejected, obviously did not feel embarrassed at all. Or, like any other ordinary woman, she immediately ran away and hid. Zhu Mo. She turned to look at Yu Zhuchang, her red lips moving slightly as if she wanted to explain something. Get lost, he said. Yu Zhekong cut her off and emphasized once more. There was a dark aura in his voice. Everyone in the banquet hall who heard this felt that if Daiwo Kinga did not listen to her, she would be crushed into pieces. However, Daiwo Kinga didn't seem to believe it. Not only did she not shut up, she even tried to get closer to Yu Zhuchang. Your Highness, this is like a mayfly. Roar. Outside the Qin Manor, a domineering dragon's roar suddenly burst out. Not only that, everyone in the audience saw a dragon's claw squeezing in from the banquet hall's entrance at lightning speed, and with a swoosh, it grabbed towards Daiwo Kinga. Yu Zhekong's method was very simple and brutal, asking you to scram, right? Then he would just throw it out. As for whether you can withstand the fall of the legendary 4th grade magical beast, the White Flood Dragon, then it'll depend on luck. However, usually, those that were thrown out by the White Flood Dragon would turn into a pile of bloody mud. This was a level higher than the average meat residue the corpse-destroying method. Ninefold, stop. Therefore, Daiwu Qingshang and Emperor Yu Qinyi, who saw this scene, tried to stop him. But at the same time, roar, yet another sound that sounded obviously younger, similar to a dragon's roar, was also heard at this time. Moreover, the sound had clearly attracted the attention of the White Flood Dragon, causing her movements to slow down slightly. At this moment, Jun Wuming was entrusted by Yu Qinyi to push Daiwo Kinga away with a gust of wind from his palm. This allowed her to narrowly avoid the white aquatic dragon's sharp claws. But this. The white aquatic dragon's huge claws, which were as sharp as blades, suddenly accelerated and tore at Daiwo Kinga. Chapter 182, Chapter 182, Issuing a Challenge, 1. Chapter 182, Issuing a Challenge, 1. This speed was extremely fast. It was as fast as lightning. Jun Wuming, who was still quite a distance away, had no way to attack again. And Yu Zhuchang's intentions were clear, he wouldn't stop until he had thrown him out. He did not give Jun Wuming any face at all, nor did he care about Yu Qinyi. However, Daiwo Kinga, who was facing such a dangerous situation, did not panic at all. She was even able to dodge with all her might, even though her speed was not worth mentioning compared to the white aquatic dragon. However, her ability to remain calm in the face of danger really made everyone present marvel and feel that it was a pity. After all, if the white aquatic dragon were to make a move, the consequences would be dire. A peerless beauty like Daiwo Kinga would definitely be finished. And the relationship between the 5th family and the royal family would probably become a little delicate. Yu Qinyi had asked Jun Wuming to stop Yu Zhekong because he wanted to maintain the balance between the noble families in the dynasty. However, he didn't expect Yu Zhekong to be so stubborn as to kill him. Swish. Daiwo Kinga had already been captured. Yu Qinyi could only hope that Yu Zhekong would know his limits and not let the white water dragon kill the girl. Many of the people present had the same anticipation as Yu Qinyi. After all, the situation in the imperial court was still stable, and everyone instinctively hoped that there would be no chaos. Just as everyone was still hoping that Yu Zhuchang would be merciful. Bang bang. As the waves of energy spread out, each wave was heavier than the last. The white aquatic dragon grabbed Daiwo Kinga's dragon claw and released layers of fire-colored strange light waves. This is a Kazaya. The rich and powerful people at the scene looked at each other in surprise after seeing the strangeness of the light. A gunpowder talisman. Yu Qinyi was clearly a little surprised. In the entire dynasty, there was only one person who could use the innate spiritual fire to create a protective talisman and give it to someone else, the level 4 alchemist Yu Fu. As for Yu Fu himself, he was the Grand Elder of the Heavenly Hospital and the #1 alchemist in Tianqian dynasty. In addition, the gunpowder talismans were similar to drugs that took effect immediately, and they had to be used within half a day after the talisman was drawn, otherwise, it would be ineffective. Did the fifth family hook up with Yu Fu, which was why they dared to be so arrogant? But what right did the fifth shop have? What kind of relationship did they have? Has Senior Yu accepted you as his disciple? Yu Qianyi's voice deepened as he looked at Dai Wuqingge, who was imprisoned by the dragon claw. And Dai Wuqingge's answer was, Your Majesty, yes. Naturally. Wushai. The crowd burst into an uproar. Even though more than 90% of the people in the banquet hall had seen the world, they were still excited. Moreover, it said that Lord Yu Fu had an appointment with Miss Qingge. He said that if Miss Qingge could advance to a grade 2 alchemist before the age of 25, he would make an exception and accept her as his disciple? Ah, right, right. I remember that too. Does this mean that Miss Dai Wuqingge is already a level 2 alchemist? Heavens! The scene exploded. Even for the entire Tianqian dynasty, a level 2 alchemist was a priceless existence. Moreover, Dai Wuqingge was only 24 years old, not even 25. Then her alchemy potential was naturally unquestionable. So, Miss Bai, you're not willing to quit. Under the protection of the fire talisman, Dai Wuqingge once again pointed her blade at Bai Ye, instead of continuing to argue with Yu Zhekong. Yu Zhekong didn't let the white aquatic dragon exert its strength anymore, because he could already sense that someone powerful was coming from above. Chapter 183, Chapter 183, Issuing a Challenge, 2. Chapter 183, Issuing a Challenge, 2. As for White Knight, who had been repeatedly attacked, she was also speechless and intoxicated when she heard this. However, what made her almost roll her eyes on the spot was Dai Wuqingge's following challenge dash. It's fine if you don't want to. As long as you have the guts to fight me and win, I can lower myself. But do you dare? Do you have the ability to do so? As Dai Wuqingge spoke, the flames around his body exploded. The explosive talisman that was protecting her shattered, and layers of flames burst out, which also managed to free the white flood dragon's huge claws a little. Swish! A beam of fire flew in from outside the banquet hall as if it had eyes, and directly slashed at the white flood dragon's claws. The white flood dragon nimbly pulled Dai Wuqingge and dodged. A fiery figure flew into the banquet hall, and a giant claw of fire tore at the white flood dragon. Accompanying this attack was an old but angry voice. Evil beast, you're not letting go. When most of the people in the banquet hall heard this voice, their eyes narrowed and their expressions immediately became solemn. Even Yu Qianyi, Jun Wuming, and Qin Bang's expressions darkened. The person who had just arrived was Yu Fu, the great-grandfather elder of the Heavenly Hospital and the #1 alchemist of the dynasty. Little White. However, Yu Zhekong's dark eyes flickered and a layer of red appeared as he shouted. Whoosh, a white light descended from the sky and flashed into the banquet hall. After that, before they could figure out what was going on, they all heard a sharp scream. And then again. Only then did everyone clearly see that a small white flood dragon with silver scales and a faint golden light had appeared in the banquet hall. It was Yu Zhekong's mount, the shrunken version of the white flood dragon. It was only the size of his claws when it appeared in the banquet hall. Roar, the little white dragon's blood-red eyes and its sharp claws that were still holding onto Dai Wuqingge's hands even though it had shrunk showed that its dragon might was inviolable. As for Dai Wuqingge, the light of the gunpowder talisman around her body had obviously been shattered. One of the little white dragon's sharp claws was about to land on her throat. As long as the little white flood dragon grabbed at Dai Wuqingge unhappily, Dai Wuqingge's head would definitely be separated from his body. Bastard! At this time, an old man with white hair and a white beard who was confronting the little white flood dragon was so angry that his old face turned black and red. The old man was none other than Yu Fu. When Dai Wuqingge activated the gunpowder talisman, he could clearly sense that his new disciple's life was in danger. Therefore, he followed the aura of the gunpowder talisman and rushed over. However, he did not expect that the one who would activate his gunpowder talisman would be the white flood dragon. Therefore, when he saw this scene, he was stunned for a moment, but he still chose to attack. However, he had never expected that the white flood dragon would not only not let go of his hand, but would also go against him even though he had personally made a move. Ninefold brat, you still won't let that evil beast let go. Yu Fu rebuked Yu Zhekong. Even though Yu Zhekong's talent surprised him, as the #1 alchemist in the dynasty, Yu Fu didn't need to bow to anyone. After all, even Yu Qianyi had always been polite to him, treating him as if he were Jun Wuming. I can't. Yu Zhekong refused without giving any face. Chapter 184, Chapter 184, For Your Sake, 1. Chapter 184, For Your Sake, 1. Everyone in the hall, including Yu Qianyi, widened their eyes when they heard that. Alright. He actually rejected it directly. It was the request of the number one alchemist in the dynasty. This was really not giving him face. He was simply super arrogant. In the entire dynasty, he was probably the only one who dared to do this. Wasn't he afraid that when he was on the verge of death, Lord Yu Fu would leave him to die and refuse to refine a life-saving pill? What the f***ck? Yu Fu was so angry that he almost choked. He never thought that this kid would be so shameless. He didn't buy it at all. Seeing that the situation was getting out of control, Yu Qinyi cleared his throat and said, "Ninefold, don't be so angry. Let her go first and we'll talk about it slowly. You can't solve the problem like this. Not bad, not bad. Ninth Highness, don't worry. Yes, yes, yes. Ninth Highness, please calm down." The observant nobles quickly chimed in with Yu Qinyi. Only Qin Bang and Jun Wuming didn't say anything. The former stood on Bai Ye's side and wouldn't let Yu Juchang release her, while the latter knew that with Yu Juchang's willful personality, he would definitely not let her go. The result was as expected. Your son feels that it's fine. Just like that, Yu Juchang retorted Yu Qinyi's words. Yu Qinyi thought, Qian, this brat. Can't he show some respect to his old father? However, what Yu Qinyi didn't know was that Yu Juchang was actually giving him face by not killing Dai Woking on the spot. Otherwise, Dai Woking's words would have killed her 100 times over. At this moment, the entire arena went silent because of Yu Juchang's reply. Everyone didn't know what to say. Yu Fu, who was angered to death, wanted to speak, but Little White, throw it out. Yu Juchang had already given the order to the little white flood dragon. When the shrunken white flood dragon heard this, its blood-red eyes lit up, and it raised its claws. No. Your Highness, you can't. You will regret this. Dai Wokinga, who was really frightened, said hurriedly. Her voice was obviously not as calm as before, but she was still able to maintain her normal tone, which meant that she was quite something. Unfortunately, Yu Juchang ignored her, and the little white flood dragon naturally didn't care about what she said either. It waved its claws. You, Zhen, you dare. Kinga will become a level 5 alchemist in the future. Stop it. Yu Juchang, Yu Fu was about to die from anger and anxiety. Level 5. Juchang, we order you to stop. Yu Qinyi's tone became more serious when he heard the word level 5. As the ruler of the dynasty, he had to think for the dynasty's benefit. And a level 5 alchemist was definitely a talent that the dynasty desperately needed. Yu Juchang didn't listen. He stood in front of Bai Ye coldly. No matter what anyone said, he would not order the little white dragon to stop. At this time, the little white dragon had already finished gathering its power and was ready to drop. It, who loved to throw people, decided to throw the person in its claws to the 9th heaven. Wan had been quiet the entire time. Bai Ye, who was standing behind Yu Juchang and rolling his eyes, suddenly reached out and tugged at the corner of Yu Juchang's shirt. Don't lose it. I have the guts to fight her, for you. White Knight's words. Yu Juchang's eyes flickered, and a layer of glass-like red light bloomed in the depths of his eyes like spring flowers. Chapter 185, Chapter 185, For Your Sake, 2. Chapter 185, For Your Sake, 2. For you. If Bai Ye had only said the first part, Yu Juchang could have remained unmoved, but the words for you really moved him. He subconsciously turned his head to look at the person who was pulling on the corner of his shirt and looking up at him. Don't throw it. Shiroya looked at Yu Juchang with obvious surprise, but he emphasized again with a probing look. And when she said for your sake, she meant it. She knew that Yu Juchang would do this to protect her and to protect her dignity. So even though this ridiculous Miss Dai Wokinga made her speechless, she didn't want to bother about it. After all, this was Yu Juchang's brainless admirer. Release him. Even though Bai Ye did not know much about the connections in the imperial court, and did not know about Yu Fur's position in the dynasty, she knew that since Yu Qinyi had emphasized on Dai Wokinga, she could not just let Yu Juchang throw her out. If not, the relationship between Yu Juchang and Yu Qinyi would not be as good as it seemed. She was afraid that it would be difficult for her to gain a foothold in the dynasty in the future because she believed that most people would think that she was a femme fatale. Of course, she could just ignore all of this. As long as Yu Juchang was always so good to her and strong enough to protect her, there wouldn't be any problems. But White Knight did not want this to happen. For her own future, and for Yu Juchang, she had a better solution. However, Yingluo Swishai the little white flood dragon had completed the airdrop at this time. It had thrown out Dai Wokinga. Dai Wokinga's scream could be heard from both inside and outside the banquet hall. Everyone in the hall was speechless. Everyone took a deep breath. White Knight, her grip on Yu Juchang's shirt tightened. Yu Fu, he was so angry that he almost fainted. However, Just when everyone thought that Daiwo Kinga was done for, Little White, catch him. Yu Kong said. Everyone heard a swish, and the little white dragonarm immediately unleashed its lightning-like speed and chased after its target. Everyone was a little stunned and didn't know how to react. However, the little white flood dragon left quickly and returned quickly as well. In just a short while, he was back in the banquet hall. Daiwo Kinga was still in his claws, but her face was as pale as paper. She was scared. Seeing that Daiwo Kinga was fine, Yu Qianqian heaved a sigh of relief. He had already made up his mind that no matter what methods he used, he had to make Yu Kong accept this child as well. Such a good seedling would definitely leave him a good grandson. As for Bai Ye, even if he wasn't completely crippled, he wouldn't be in perfect condition according to the information he'd gathered. Otherwise, he could wait for a few more years for the child to grow up and get married. You really want to compete? Yu Kong, who didn't know what Yu Qianyi was thinking, only had eyes for Bai Ye. Yes, yes. Bai Ye nodded hurriedly. She was afraid that Yu Chong would throw her out again. She had really been shocked just now. He. Yu Kong chuckled and pinched the face of the person in front of him. He actually knew that Bai Ye's acceptance of the challenge was mostly for her own sake. Saying that it was for him was just one of the minor reasons, and it was also a small trick to coax him. After all, these words touched him the most. She was really a smart little thing. Even so, he was still very happy. All right, then this king will be waiting for you. Yu Kong's hand tightened as he emphasized, don't lose me, or I won't let you off. Chapter 186, Chapter 186, Chapter 186 Shameless. Chapter 186, Chapter 186 Shameless. Bai Ye, Yingluo. When she heard this, she knew that this cunning prince knew what she was thinking, but he did not deny her actions. Otherwise, it would be quite unpleasant for a prince like him to be used as a bet by others. Yup, he was so fierce just now and insisted on throwing her out. Maybe he felt embarrassed and insisted on doing that. Yingluo. You're tactful. At this time, Daiwo Kinga, who knew that she would not be thrown out, also calmed her mind and said in a calm voice. She actually did not think that Bai Ye had the guts to compete with her. She believed that Bai Ye was only afraid. After all, if something really happened to her, Ninth Highness would be fine since he was strong, but she believed that her master Yu Fu would not let it go. However, as soon as she finished speaking, she was startled by a cold and dark gaze. She looked over subconsciously and saw the man she had been thinking about. Daiwo Kinga clenched her fist and muttered in her heart, Ninth Highness, you're so silly. She knew that Yu Kong didn't like her. From the moment she fell for this man, she had never seen this man's eyes that were filled with admiration for her like other men. However, she had always believed that she would still become his princess. It didn't matter even if he didn't like her. She just wanted to be with him in name. In the past, she had always thought that her dream would not be too difficult to come true. After all, there was no one in the dynasty who was more suitable than her for the imperial ninefold. She believed that the emperor would definitely choose her in order to inherit the excellent bloodline of the royal family. However, Yingluo. You must be my, Daiwo Kinga's. Daiwo Kinga clenched her fists and looked at Yu Kong with a fearless gaze. She didn't believe that he wouldn't fall in love with her, even though she was so outstanding. And from the sound of it, the reason he chose this White Knight, wasn't it because of White Knight's talent? Then she had to tell him that she was more outstanding than Bai Ye. Alright, today's matter is a matter between you young people, so I can't say much. However, since you three have made your decision, I'm willing to be a witness. Yu Qianyi added. However, but I have already given the imperial edict, and the imperial will not change. Today is also the engagement banquet between Zhe Kong and that child, Bai Ye. No matter what the outcome is, this ceremony will continue. Yu Qianyi declared. Even though he already had other thoughts in his mind, he still had to weigh Jun Wuming's words and Yu Kong's and Qin Ju's attitudes. Yu Qianqian changed the topic. If Kinga wins, I'll issue an imperial edict later and it doesn't matter if I lower myself. The two of you will have to live harmoniously in the future and take care of the affairs of the residents for Zhe Kong. These two sentences fully demonstrated Yu Qianyi's excellent ability to balance power. Your subject thanks your majesty. When Daiwo Kinga provoked Bai Ye, Daiwo Qingshang, who had also rushed over, immediately knelt down and thanked Yu Qianyi. He understood what Yu Qianyi meant. He agreed to grant Daiwo Kinga the status of the ninth princess consort. This was the result that the fifth shop wanted. After all, the other so-called ninth princess consort was still young, and it was unknown how long it would take for her to get married. When the time came, their fifth family would pull some strings and Kinga would first enter the king's residence to control everything. What was the matter with that little girl? I'm your son, Qianqian. Yu Kong was displeased again, and he was about to object. However, Baya grabbed his sleeve again and took a step forward. She was the one who stood in front of Yu Zhekong. I don't agree. Chapter 187, Chapter 187, Pill Battle, 1. Chapter 187, Pill Battle, 1. Upon hearing this, swish. Everyone's eyes were fixed on White Knight. Because no one had expected that this little girl would actually dare to disobey the imperial decree so directly. In the entire imperial court, only Yu Zhekong would occasionally dare to do such a thing. No one else would dare to. But who was Yu Zhekong? He had the capital. However, this little girl was too embarrassed to say anything. If I lose, then I will give up the identity of the 9th princess consort and let Daiwo Kinga be the only 9th princess consort. Baya said again. When everyone heard this, their disbelief instantly turned into even more disbelief. Did she know what she was saying? White Knight, do you know what you're saying? Yu Qinyi asked in a low voice. Baya knelt down and said, I know, but although I come from a small village and am still young, I yearn to be with one person for the rest of my life. If I lose, then I'd rather not marry than share my husband with others. Your Majesty, please grant me this wish. With that, White Knight directly kowtowed. And her words were simply a slap to the face of Daiwo Kinga and the Daiwo family. Because she disdained to be a mistress and disdained to share her husband with others, but Daiwo Kinga was willing. And he was begging at their door. You silly child. Yu Qinyi sighed. At this moment, he still thought that Baya had a body full of pride because of his innate talent. And from Baya's talent in the talent test, he also knew that she should have such pride. Your Majesty, please grant me this wish. At the same time, Qin Ban, who had been sitting down all this time, also knelt down and said. Obviously, Qin Bang didn't want Baya to be the 9th Wanjai's equal wife, it was the 5th family's fight. He didn't think much of it either, because he knew that their spirit lord totally deserved better. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew Yu Zhuchang's talent was really good, and that the latter's actions just now had satisfied him, Qin Bang would have directly called off this marriage, it was just the imperial family. What's so great about it? Minister Qin, what are you doing? Yu Qinyi frowned. He knew that Qin Mu was a man of silence, but if he said something, it meant that he really had something to say. I beg your Majesty to grant me this wish. At this moment, the villagers of Prajna village, who were originally sitting at the banquet seats, walked out and knelt in the middle of the banquet hall under Jifu's lead. They were disdainful. They were also unwilling to let Baya suffer. All right, I'll allow it. If Baya loses, this emperor will take back the imperial decree for the first time, and this marriage will not be granted. Yu Qinyi's tone was a little low, indicating that he was unhappy. But no matter if it was Qin Ban, Jifu, or the others, they all kowtowed and thanked him without changing their minds. Thank you, Your Majesty. Thank you, Your Majesty, but I will definitely win. Baya kowtowed in thanks in response. Oh. Yu Qinyi's eyes narrowed slightly, and the displeasure in his heart dissipated a little. Baya's words showed that she was not ignoring the imperial edict, but that she was really arrogant. People like Qin Ban weren't dissatisfied, but people from the Prajna village were arrogant. So, Miss Daiwo Kinga, please tell me what you want to do. I'll fight with you to the end, even if it's just refining medicine. I'll take it too. Baya taunted back, word by word. Because what White Knight said was an alchemy contest. And everyone in the world knew that Daiwo Kinga was known as the most talented alchemist in the dynasty. Could it be that she's also a genius alchemist? The venue was in an uproar. Chapter 188, Chapter 188, Pill Battle, 2. Chapter 188, Pill Battle, 2. At this moment, even though Baya was kneeling, the spirit that she exuded could not be ignored. Humph, you don't know your place. Yufu, who had finally calmed down after Daiwo Kinga was released, laughed sarcastically. It was not that he had not heard of White Knight's talent. On the contrary, Daiwo Kinga had communicated with him before he did things, so he was very clear about many things. If it was the White Knight of the past, Yufu might not have recommended Daiwo Kinga to take risks. However, if she had been hit by a national beauty, no matter how good her talent was, it would be useless. Even though the Han family's kid had saved him, Yufu was certain that Baya could only recover by at most 50%. However, Yufu was afraid that Daiwo Kinga would be provoked and would be embarrassed to say that they wanted to compete in alchemy skills, so he continued to say Geer, since this girl is so foolish, you should compete with her in alchemy. You don't have to hide your awkwardness and directly bring out your peak alchemy skills. It's also good to let the ignorant know how to cherish it. And the last few sentences were obviously meant for Yu Zhuchang. Yes, your disciple will obey master's orders. Daiwo Kinga replied immediately. She naturally understood what Yufu was trying to imply. At the same time, she secretly glanced at Yu Kong. But what about Yu Chong? He was helping Bai Ye up and was even holding her in his arms as if there was no one else around. Wretched girl, are you sure you want to compete in alchemy? Yu Kong whispered into Bai Ye's ear. He suspected that Bai Ye was unhappy with his forced engagement and wanted to use this opportunity to get rid of him. This girl knew how to refine medicine. Why didn't he know about it? Although she did have talent in this area, she had not had the time to learn alchemy. Was this little thing playing with him? If it was Yingluo. Yeah, I'm sure I'll win. White Knight replied. Yu Chong let go of the person in his arms and looked at her deeply. He still had a chance to stop this battle that he didn't want to start. Miss Bai, as you wish, let's compete in alchemy. Dai Wukinga, who couldn't stand it anymore, opened her mouth and said. Sure. Would White Knight be afraid of a medicine refining competition? What a joke. Yu Kong didn't stop Bai Ye, but secretly pinched her waist. Then, he flicked his sleeves and left. Forget it, let her be if she wanted to. It was best if she won, but it didn't matter if she didn't. After all, no one could force Yu Kong to do something he didn't want to do. By then, Yu Qinyi had already given the order for the competition to begin. Please, he said. Dai Wukinga saluted Bai Yexing as soon as she entered the arena. She looked confident. Please, he said. Bai Ye also saluted, but dash. Your Highness, do you have a medicinal cauldron? Bai Ye suddenly thought of this problem. After all, the medicinal cauldrons she used to refine medicine were all casually made. She was not an art student, and the finished product was really a little rough, so it was not suitable for her to appear on stage. Yu Kong felt that he had really been tricked. The audience, what the hell is this? An alchemist without a medicinal cauldron? Was there such an alchemist? Obviously not. So, this girl was out to mess around. Han Yu, give her your medicinal cauldron. Yu Kong gritted his teeth. He was going to give this man a good beating. He definitely wouldn't let him off. Now, let her be. Let's see how she's going to do it. Ge Han Yu, who was called out, had no choice but to hand over his own medicinal cauldron. His medicinal cauldron was naturally of excellent quality. Little junior sister, take it easy. Han Yu solemnly reminded Bai Ye. Chapter 189, Chapter 189, Pill Battle, 3. Chapter 189, Pill Battle, 3. Don't worry, I won't break it. Bai Ye took the medicinal cauldron and promised. Han Yu, Yingluo. That wasn't what he meant, alright? He was just reminding her not to go overboard. Otherwise, a certain willful young master would probably go crazy. Moreover, how could she break his cauldron? What a joke. It's fine. You can use this meteor cauldron as you wish. It won't break. Han Yu patted his beloved cauldron, not willing to let it suffer any grievances. Alright, let's start. Don't dawdle. Yu Fu urged. He couldn't wait to let the people know how amazing his new disciples' alchemy skills were. After that, Meng Qingfang, who was called by Yu Qinyi to host the competition, had no choice but to announce the start of the competition. Two young ladies, please. Wait a moment. Bai Ye suddenly interrupted. Everyone immediately looked at her. Just now, we were all talking about what would happen if I lost. We haven't even said what would happen if Dai Wukinga lost. Otherwise, it would be a huge loss if I won. White Knight expressed that he did not want to suffer any losses. The whole audience, Yingluo alright, they really didn't think that White Knight would win. I can't possibly lose. Dai Wukinga also said in a light tone. You don't have the final say. I want you to stop shamelessly seducing other people's men if you lose, like His Highness Ju. White Knight said sharply. Dai Wukinga was instantly stabbed and felt a little embarrassed. Also, take a detour when you see me in the future. Don't let me see you again, understand? Bai Ye was too lazy to be a scholar, because in her eyes, Dai Wukinga was already a defeated opponent. You're too much. Dai Wukinga's breath sank. Alright, I agree. She would endure it? When she won, when she got her wish, she would deal with this ignorant fool. So you also know that you are shameless. Bai Ye's lips curved into a smile. Dai Wukinga, Yingluo. Gu Changhe, who was in the crowd, laughed. Many people who had realized what was going on also could not help but laugh. Because Dai Wukinga's agreement really meant that she was admitting that she was shameless and had seduced other people's men. Thinking about her behavior today, it was even more so. Alright, Master Meng, you can announce the start. Bai Ye was more familiar with Meng Qingfang. After all, the latter had hosted the new generation ranking and the talent ranking. Meng Qingfang held back her laughter and maintained a serious expression as she nodded. Ladies, please begin. Although he had no prejudice against Daiwokinga, the latter's intrusion today made him, as a citizen of the Cyan Cloud State, feel that he had gone too far. The competition began. Daiwokinga, who wanted to take revenge, immediately released the innate spiritual fire that she was so proud of. Swish! A snow-white lotus-shaped flame bloomed on Daiwokinga's palm. The lotus fire bloomed like a holy lotus on a snowy mountain, faintly exuding an independent and ethereal aura. This was obviously a complete match with the aura that was surrounding Daiwokinga. This was also the first time that Daiwokinga had displayed her innate spiritual fire in front of others. Nine Heavens White Lotus Flame. Yukinyi's voice grew heavy. Everyone at the venue gasped in unison. It's the Nine Heavens White Lotus Flame. It's one of the top 10 innate spiritual flames in the history of the continent. The Immoligible Genius Academy head Chang Bizhu immediately became the commentator. No wonder Grand Elder Xiu thinks so highly of this child. The head of the Heavenly Hospital, Yao Kanglin, was also surprised. After all, since Daiwokinga was Yu Fur's disciple, he was also a genius of the Heavenly Hospital. You're indeed talented, Qian. The dignitaries on the scene nodded in appreciation. Daiwokinga grinned. The fire in her palm was made even more beautiful and extraordinary by her. Swish! White Knight also set fire. Chapter 190, Chapter 190, Pill Battle, 4. Chapter 190, Pill Battle, 4. A wisp of pure white flame with a faint red glow ignited in Bai Ye's palm. And when her fire came out, it was dark and evil. The icy cold and arrogant aura directly crushed the lotus flame in Daiwokinga's hand from the palm of her hand. The Nine Heavens White Lotus flame in Daiwokinga's hand immediately wilted. The white lotus flame of the ninth heaven even let out a faint whimpering sound in an instant. The ball of fire was like a wilted lotus flower, trying to burrow back into Daiwokinga's body. And in this situation, what's going on? Cheng Bizhu had never heard of it. This is a Pixiu. Yao Kanglin was a little dumbfounded, but he had seen this situation in ancient books, and if he did not remember wrong, could this be the suppression of fire? The natural pressure of a high-level flame over a low-level flame. Han Yu, the expert, stood up in shock and stared at White Knight's fire seed. Woo, the Nine Heavens White Lotus flame's whimpers became even more obvious. It completely expressed that it had been completely crushed. It's afraid of Ching. How could it be? Daiwokinga's expression changed drastically. After all, she was most proud of her alchemy, and her fire seed was naturally her greatest asset. But now, the competition had not even started, and White Knight had only released a flame, and her fire seed had automatically surrendered. This, Yingluo, how is this possible? Swish. On the other hand, Yu Fu, who was sitting on top of Bai Ye, suddenly struck out with his palm, directly hitting the flame in Bai Ye's hand. Demonic flame, don't be so arrogant. Yu Fu's palm strikes were especially fast. In addition, no one would have thought that he would shamelessly make a move, so everyone was stunned. White Knight also had no time to defend. But Yu Zhekong's eyes flashed. Impudent. At the same time, Jun Wuming swept his palm and dispersed Yu Fu's palm wind. He even rebuked, Senior Yu Fu. Don't think that this is your heavenly hospital, do you even have His Majesty in your eyes? Hearing this, Yu Qinyi's face darkened. Mannerhead Jun, don't slander me. I only wanted to suppress this demonic fire. Such a strange aura, I've never heard of a fire seed before. It can't be a good fire seed. Yu Fu argued. Nonsense. At this moment, Han Yu jumped up, how ignorant. This isn't a demonic flame, it's the Wuji Dark Flame, the number 1 innate spiritual flame. It was ranked first. Everyone at the venue was stunned. But no one doubted Han Yu's words. Why? This was because even though Han Yu had never refined medicine in front of others, and no one had ever compared his talent to Daiwokinga's, and he was not that old either, he was already a publicly acknowledged medicine master in the medicine refining world. Not for any other reason, but because Han Yu was the disciple of the Heaven's Will Mansion's mysterious alchemist, Old Ghost, who had been by his side since childhood. Han Yu, you brat, are you sure? As a result, Yu Qinyi took Han Yu's words very seriously. I'm sure. This is definitely the aura of the Wuji Dark Flame. Han Yu's tone was extremely excited, because this was also his first time seeing the legendary limitless dark flame. However, he was certain after identifying it again and again. Little junior sister is definitely a top genius in the alchemist world. Just because she could awaken the Wuji Dark Flame, she's even more talented than me. Han Yu said with absolute certainty. Daiwokinga's face turned as white as a white lotus. How could she have expected that she would be beaten to a pulp before the competition even started? It was just a fire battle. No. Absolutely not. Chapter 191, Chapter 191, Chapter 191 This Prince is the Rule. Chapter 191, Chapter 191 This Prince is the Rule. Dai Wukinga took a deep breath and tried to calm herself down. The people present were suddenly shocked. They all sucked in a deep breath. Then, to Dai Wukinga's surprise, the flame that Baya had been controlling suddenly died out. And her nine heavens white lotus flame had come alive after that. What's going on? Why is Miss Baya's fire gone? Yeah, why did it turn off? Could it be that her profound chi is insufficient and she can't activate this fire for a long time? This swan and I. The discussions at the scene rose and fell. Even the extremely excited Hanyu was a little confused. He couldn't help but anxiously jump onto the stage and ask Baya, little junior sister, what's wrong? After the poison was removed, the fire seed became a little strange. I haven't figured it out yet. Don't worry, I'll take a look at Yingluo again. White Knight pretended to be calm, and then pretended to be powerless, and quickly closed his eyes to make adjustments. The way she was acting made Yu Zhekong's face turn black. He didn't care about the competition anymore and walked up to Baya, wanting to carry him off the stage. Don't. Baya, who sensed that something was wrong, immediately pulled on Yu Zhekong's sleeve and shouted. Be good, let's stop. Yu Zhekong hugged her waist tightly and lifted her up in his arms. He couldn't bear to see his girl suffer on the field. Your Highness, this is against the rules. This is. Dai Wukinga saw that the situation was in her favor and was not willing to let Baya go. She immediately opened her mouth to stop him. However, Yu Zhekong didn't wait for her to finish before he cut her off indifferently. She's my fiancée. I'm the one who says the rules. If she wants to refine pills, this king will let her. If she doesn't, who would dare to force her? It was almost in an instant. Yu Zhekong's domineering words made everyone's ears buzz. Imperial father, I've said before that if I want to marry a wife, I will only marry Baya. Yu Zhekong hugged Baya and looked straight at Yu Jianqian. And this sentence. He had indeed told Yu Qinyi about it at the Han family home yesterday. After he said this, he immediately returned to the room where Baya was recuperating with the imperial edict in his hand. Ninefold. Yu Qinyi had never expected his bad-tempered son to humiliate him in front of everyone. Normally, this would be fine in private, but in this situation. Bastard. Yu Jianqian slammed the table in anger. Plop, 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 plop. All the influential people in the banquet hall knelt. When the emperor was angry, who would dare not to kneel? The only one left was Yu Zhekong, who was carrying Baya. She didn't expect Yu Zhekong to be so excited, she was just acting. She only wanted to force out those hidden evil spirits and monsters to deal with them together this time, so she had to put on a good act. Yu Zhekong, this idiot, Sugzu. But it was so stupid that it made her heart feel warm. He was afraid that her body had not fully recovered, and refining pills while injured would be bad for her body. However, if he continued to fight with his father like this, how could he let her be his wife in the future? The emperor must hate her to death, Yingluo. Fine, you can leave now. You've grown up and I can't control you anymore. I'll take care of your matters in the future. Yu Ganyu was also extremely angry. He was about to say some harsh words on the spot. As the emperor of a country, there were some words that could not be taken back once they were said. Chapter 192, Chapter 192, This Prince is the Rule, 2. Chapter 192, This Prince is the Rule, 2. Your Majesty. The ninth stage has recently been possessed by Shen power, and his temperament has been affected. You are magnanimous, so don't hold it against a child. Jun Wuming cut him off. Baya was already scribbling on Yu Zhekong's palm. I'm fine. I'm just trying to trick you. Quickly apologize and the competition will continue. Trust me. Yu Zhekong furrowed his brows, as if he couldn't react in time. Baya quickly wrote, quickly apologize, I'm fine. Trust me. Yu Zhekong looked at Baya suspiciously. Baya used all his chi and pinched Yu Zhekong's waist. This way, he would know that she was full of energy. Yu Zhekong was caught off guard, and he almost grimaced in pain. Little thing, are you trying to break this king's waist? Yu Zhekong's voice rang out in Baya's head, giving him a huge shock. He had no idea what kind of magic Yu Zhekong was using. Ninefold, don't you agree? At this moment, Jun Wuming, who was trying his best to signal Yu Zhekong with his eyes but was completely ignored, had no choice but to speak up. Baya quickly pinched Yu Ninefold's palm, urging him to stop causing trouble. Yes, your son was wrong. I shouldn't have talked back to Imperial Father. Your son knows MS Reamscat. Yu Jaluknong 10110 we MS Ovals Anna Apologesia. Yu Kinkin's expression softened. He couldn't really fall out with Yu Zhekong. You mean you're going to continue to fight with me in private? Yu Zhekong stopped talking. That's enough. Let go of your precious fiancé. She just said that she won't marry him if she can't win. This wasn't what I said. I also promised not to force her. You didn't jump out just now, but it doesn't count if you jump out now. Yu Zhekong's face darkened, and he opened his mouth to say something. Bai Ye was the first to speak. His Majesty is right. Your Highness, please fulfill his wish. You are a godlike figure, so you should marry the most outstanding woman. If a commoner's daughter can't do it, you should abdicate and give up your position. What are you doing? Yu Zhekong's eyes darkened. Even though Bai Ye had communicated with him in secret, he still felt uncomfortable hearing this. Your Highness, please grant Ye Er's wish. Qin Ban spoke at the right time. Yu Zhekong lifted his eyes to look at Qin Ban, and the latter nodded in agreement. He took a deep breath and finally let go of Bai Ye. The audience heaved a sigh of relief. After all, if Yu Zhekong really wanted to cause a scene, there was nothing they could do. Senior Marshal Brother Han, take me down to drive away the baleful Qi. My mind is a little unstable. Yu Zhekong was basically admitting that he was sick. Han Yu immediately played along and said, didn't I tell you? We'll talk about it a month after the engagement. You're not suitable for Han Han in your current condition. Hearing this, Yu Qinyi thought that something had really happened to Yu Zhekong and quickly asked Yao Kanglan to take his pulse. It was another round of chaos and only calmed down after about 15 minutes. Following that, Meng Qingfang wiped away his cold sweat and continued to preside over the alchemy competition. However, he was grumbling in his heart. He knew that this was not a good job. Mediocre opponents will always try to use unorthodox methods to affect your pill refining state. You don't have to care about what happened just now. Just focus on refining your pill. I will make the decision for you. I want to see who dares to bully my disciple. When the competition started again, Yu Fu bluntly said, however, he did not think that as an elder, he had just attacked Bai Ye. Was that considered a mainstream method? Chapter 193, Chapter 193, A Third-Grade Alchemist, 1. Chapter 193, A Third-Grade Alchemist, 1. Grandmaster Yu, are you implying that I will be unfair? Yu Jianqian, who was in a bad mood, immediately found a punching bag and questioned him. I don't dare to, Yu Fu replied. I don't think you dare. This world is mine. Yu Qinyi could not do anything to Yu Zhekong, but anyone who dared to challenge his authority would be asking for death. I'm afraid, Yu Fu said. Only then did Yu Qinyi's expression ease. There's still 2 hours left. You two girls, hurry up. You're tired. In other words, if he couldn't settle it within an hour, then he would stop. He couldn't be bothered. From the looks of it, Yu Zhekong had really pissed Yu Jianqian off today. The entire banquet hall fell silent. No one dared to provoke Yu Qinyi. After all, if even Yu Fu couldn't do anything, who would dare to touch the tiger's butt? Dai Wuqinga, who had a clever personality, saw this and no longer spoke any more nonsense. She immediately took out the spiritual medicine she needed and began the medicine refining process that she was familiar with. With a weng 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 sound, as the 9 heavens white lotus flame flickered rhythmically, the spiritual herbs in Dai Wuqinga's medicinal cauldron were zized as they were refined into spiritual herb essence. In just a short while, the faint smell of spiritual herbs could be smelled at the scene, which made everyone in the banquet hall feel refreshed. The originally gloomy atmosphere was also instantly lifted. Miss Kinga's alchemy skills are indeed extraordinary. Your movements are as smooth as floating clouds and flowing water. It's beautiful. Yao Kanglan's evaluation of people and not things. Not bad. At such a young age, you already have such exquisite alchemy skills. You are indeed extraordinary. The current elder of the Heavenly Hospital, Han Yu and Han Ling's father, Han Kaifeng, also nodded in praise. The few senior alchemists present all nodded. And Dai Wuqinga's alchemy skills were indeed as they had said. It was really not bad. Her movements were smooth and her control of the fire was also very good. It was not an exaggeration to call her a genius. No wonder he's so arrogant. White Knight, a new alchemist, looked on and could not help but be certain that Dai Wuqinga was indeed capable and not an idiot. Little junior sister, hee hee. Han Yu, who had been anxiously waiting for White Knight to refine the pill, did not even see Dai Wuqinga showing off. He was just anxious to know why White Knight had not started yet. What? Bai Ye looked at Han Yu strangely. Don't be stupid. Quickly wake up, it's time to refine the pill. Han Yu saw that. Bai Ye's eyes were as clear as water, without any sense of urgency at all. He was so anxious that he was sweating, as if the person who was participating in the pill refinement competition was actually him. No rush, I'll familiarize myself with the fire seed. White Knight expressed. She was really not in a hurry. She was just fishing. Han Yu, Yingluo alright, he was anxious. 15 minutes later. Quickly look. Kinga is refining the level 2 spiritual medicine blood clotting fruit. Is she trying to refine a level 2 medicinal pill blood coagulation pill? I can't be wrong. He's a second-rank alchemist. Once this child formed a pill, he set the record for the youngest second-rank alchemist in 100 years. Of course, that is if we don't consider the ranking of the Heaven Policy Mansion. That's right. Even if we count the Heavens will house, only Han Yu can beat her. This child is definitely one of the best among the women. The fifth house has hidden her well. At this moment, everyone at the banquet knew that Bai Ye was planning to give up on alchemy. She was just as she said, she wanted to step down and give up her position. Qing Xiantian, who had been silent at the back of the crowd and was present as a distant relative of Chen Bizhu, clenched his fists and stared at Bai Ye. Chapter 194, Chapter 194, Third Grade Alchemist, 2. Chapter 194, Third Grade Alchemist, 2. Master, there's a secret letter for you. At this time, Dai Wu Minkan, who was beside Dai Wu Qingshang, reported in a low voice after receiving the news. Upon hearing this, Dai Wu Qingshang waved his hand. The meaning of his words was that he did not want to look at it. Right now, all of his thoughts were on Dai Wu Kinga's medicinal cauldron. How could he have the mood to care about anything else? Master, the visitor says that we can get rid of the White Knight, this future trouble, and let eldest miss get it done once and for all. What? Only then did Dai Wu Qingshang take it and read through it. His eyes instantly lit up, and he already had a plan in mind. After another half an hour. It's almost done. Another cry of surprise came from the banquet hall. Almost everyone's eyes were instantly fixed on Dai Wu Kinga's medicinal cauldron, which had suddenly emitted a strong spiritual fluctuation. Buzz. Dai Wu Kinga's medicinal cauldron trembled violently. The raging nine heavens white lotus fire was wreaking havoc all around her. This was a sign that she was about to form a pill. With a clear chi sound, Dai Wu Kinga took out a pill from her medicinal cauldron. The entire place was in an uproar. Because Yingluo the aura of a level 2 blood clotting pill. As a level 3 alchemist, Yao Kanglan immediately detected the level of the pill from the aura it gave off. Your Majesty, please appraise it. Dai Wu Kinga's face was slightly pale. It was obvious that she had used up a lot of her energy, but she remained calm and steady. Step by step, she passed the elixir she had refined to Yu Qinyi through the guards. Dean, come over and carefully examine it. Also, Han Yu, you come over here too. Yu Qinyi called for the two of them but did not call Yu Fu. It was obvious that he had a problem with the latter's disrespect. Yes. Yao Kanglan, who was called, and Han Yu, who was anxious, could only go on stage to be the judges of Dai Wu Kinga's pills. The result was naturally. Although it's a bit rough, it's indeed a level 2 elixir. Han Yu commented, but he was extremely anxious in his heart, because there was no time. He was thinking that his junior brother Yu Zhekong was about to go crazy, so he should run away first. It's your first time refining a level 2 pill, and you already have such a look. Not bad. Yao Kanglan wasn't that picky, so he said this with admiration. At this point, there was no doubt that Dai Wu Kinga would win. This subject has a memorial. Dai Wu Qingshang's voice rang out at this moment. What do you want to report, my dear minister? Yu Qinyi was overjoyed and asked Dai Wu Qingshang, who was more pleasing to the eye. I've been hiding something from your majesty and have not reported it. Please forgive me, your majesty. Dai Wu Qingshang tactfully replied. Upon seeing this, although Dai Wu Kinga was not clear about Dai Wu Qingshang's intentions, she immediately cooperated and knelt down. My body was given to my parents. No matter what father has hidden, if the emperor wants to punish me, please punish me. I can't bear to see my old father suffer. Because of the previous incident with Yu Zhekong, Dai Wu Kinga was sure that Yu Qinyi would like her meek and filial attitude. In that case, Bai Ye would not be able to compete with her. However, she did not know that by doing so, she had unknowingly helped White Knight fish. What nonsense are you talking about? Get up, I'll pardon you. Yu Qinyi subconsciously thought that Dai Wu Qing was going to tell him about Dai Wu Kinga's talent, which he had been hiding. In addition, Dai Wu Kinga was a sensible girl who had just refined a level 2 blood clotting pill. Yu Qinyi was more and more satisfied with this future wife. Of course, he would be generous this time. Dai Wu Qingshang, who was kowtowing and standing up, said, this subject's subordinate investigated and found that Miss Bai Ye already has an engagement in the Qingyun state. Moreover, they are childhood sweethearts and have a deep relationship. I'm afraid that she disdains to marry into the imperial family, which is why she said that she would not marry and become a concubine. Chapter 195, Chapter 195, Level 3 Alchemist, 3. Chapter 195, Level 3 Alchemist, 3. The atmosphere in the stadium changed. There was a moment of silence. Yu Zhekong's heart sank into his stomach. Because he knew what Bai Ye was going to do, and he looked at the drowsy person on the field, the smile in his eyes almost flowing out. However, at that very moment, Yu Qinyi's face turned as black as ink when he thought about the written marriage agreement that he had received. As he had already received Qing Suanation's withdrawal of the marriage contract, Yu Qinyi knew that Dai Wuqing's report was backed by evidence. Thinking back to what Bai Ye, Qin Ban, and the people from Prajna village had done, Yu Qinyi was about to explode in anger. And NBSB, but... Swish. Bai Ye, who was originally resting with her eyes closed, suddenly acted as if there was no one else around. As if she was meditating, she activated a ball of limitless dark flame that wrapped around her entire body. Woof. Rub rub. The aura around Bai Ye's body was still soaring from a first-grade mystical warrior at this moment with a shocking momentum. Second grade. Third grade. Fourth grade. Peak of the fourth stage mystical warrior. Profound Secrets Manners Chief, Xian Heze. The Minister of the Heavenly Investigation Department, Ho Wenchinj. Those who reacted the fastest exclaimed in surprise. They weren't interested in alchemy, but they had the ability to advance. Not to mention this kind of three-level advancement. Heavens! The Minister of War, Quang King Muo, was so excited that he jumped up. After all, he was an uncouth fellow, so he didn't care about being an official. This girl isn't giving up. It seems like she's really familiarizing herself with her flame. To be more accurate, she was digesting the tinder's energy. Unbelievable. Yao Kanglan was dumbfounded. Weirdo. Han Yu could only say this. By the way, how old is this child? Cheng Bizhu asked with a livid face. He thought this was an important question. 15. The few powerful officials who had fought for the White Knight before, who remembered clearly, responded in unison, and then collectively turned into stone. A 15-year-old peak 4th stage mystical warrior. Just this talent alone had already left Dai Wuqing in the dust by hundreds of streets. Even if she did not know how to refine medicine, it did not matter. This was because her innate talent was destined to be a future super expert of the dynasty. An alchemist. No matter how awesome the alchemist was, he would still need a strong person to protect him. In front of absolute strength, even alchemists had to yield. That was why Yu Fu had submitted himself to Yu Qinyi, the ruler of the dynasty. Then. Freak. Abnormal. Not human. In everyone's hearts, at this moment, there were only these adjectives to describe the shock that White Knight brought to them. This was simply too exciting. Swish. Like a meditating White Knight, she seemed to be unaffected by the noise outside. At this moment, she had already thrown a series of level 2 spiritual herbs into the air. This is Yingluo. Everyone at the banquet was shocked. They did not even blink as they stared at White Knight. They had a feeling that they were going to witness another miracle. And their premonition was right. Swish. Almost at the same time, the 20 level 2 spiritual herbs that Bai Ye had thrown into the air started to smoke, and a drizzle of spiritual herb essence flowed down. Alchemy rain, amazing. Han Yu slammed the table and stood up, his eyes red from watching. Concocting medicine into rain. This child's medicine concocting skills have actually reached such a peak. Even this old man is inferior. Yao Kanglan wanted to cry. He was so excited. Chapter 196, Chapter 196, A Level 3 Alchemist. Chapter 196, A Level 3 Alchemist. The rest of the onlookers were also dumbfounded. Even though the majority of them were not familiar with alchemy, as they were not people of this profession, they were very familiar with this legendary alchemy rain realm. Because this realm was definitely the level of a master alchemist. Many of them did not even have the chance to witness such peak alchemy skills on the spot. But today, Yingluo. They had seen it for themselves. So this is what the legendary rain of medicine is like. Xian Heze's eyes flickered as he muttered in disbelief. Ho Wenchinj, who was beside him, couldn't help but sigh. I was fortunate enough to witness this level of alchemy in the Heaven's Will Mansion, but it was Master Old Ghost who used this technique. I used to think that in our dynasty, only Master Old Ghost could perform such a miracle. I never thought that today, I would actually witness such Grand Master level alchemy skills from a junior of the dynasty. A genius alchemist will definitely appear in our dynasty. I'm afraid that Huang Er's talent is not as good as hers. It won't be long before she'll become a third-rank alchemist. Han Kaifeng, who had always been proud of Han Yu, made a judgment. What? Tisk tisk. At this very moment, the vast majority of the influential people present were completely convinced by White Knight's outstanding and transcendent alchemy skills. How could this be? Dai Wuqing Shang was the one who was being tortured. His eyes were practically about to pop out of their sockets. He was not willing to believe what he was seeing. As for Daiwo Kinga, she could no longer stand still on her knees and sat paralyzed on the main hall. As an alchemist, Daiwo Kinga was well aware of the realm of making medicine rain and how much skill was required. She knew that she would not be able to learn such a skill in at least 20 years. Because this alchemy technique was too particular about the control of the fire. Even though Baya did it very easily, as long as her fire was a little fiercer, these spirit herbs that rose into the air would all wither. However, once the fire was a little weaker, it would not reach the temperature to extract the essence of the spirit medicine. Moreover, Baya had refined 20 stalks at once. Refining all 20 of them together not only requires little junior sister's fire control technique to be extremely high, but it also requires little junior sister's mental power to be extremely high. This requires at least the spiritual power of a peak great mystic cultivator to be able to do it. At this moment, Hanyu was already acting as the commentator. He also emphasized, in addition to mental strength, little junior sister must also have a heart of 7 apertures that is familiar with spirit herbs. Only then can she do everything and simultaneously extract 20 spirit herbs. At this point, Hanyu's face was already red with excitement. He couldn't help but sigh, little junior sister is indeed a weirdo with a 10-star wood and fire attribute innate talent. Her ability to sense fire and her control of spirit herbs have simply reached the point of a demon. Seeing Baye's amazing alchemy skills and listening to Hanyu's explanation, Yukinyi could not help but feel excited, but 2 hours is not much time. Daiwo Qingshang said dryly. He was the head of the Daiwo family. After experiencing a short period of shock and loss, he was able to calm down. His words immediately made Daiwo Kinga, who was sitting on the ground, and Yufu, who had an extremely ugly expression, light up in their eyes. This was because according to Yukinyi, the pill refinement process was not allowed to last more than 2 hours. As a result, Suinji. Chapter 197, Chapter 197, The Super Pill Fusion Technique, 1. Chapter 197, The Super Pill Fusion Technique, 1. When Yu Zhekong heard this, his brows furrowed. The others didn't say anything. As this matter concerned Yukinyi's saintly might, and the Daiwo family and Yufu were not to be trifled with, they really did not know what to say. However, from the bottom of their hearts, after seeing White Knight's peak alchemy skills, they did not mind that the 2 hours would be delayed. They even wished to watch for a while longer. Because what Baye was putting on right now was a master-level alchemy feast. Many of them could only witness this one miracle in their entire lives. They naturally hoped that the miracle would last a little longer. I'm afraid she can finish it on time. Hanyu said. The audience was speechless. Everyone at the scene knew that even a level 4 alchemist like Yufu would need at least an hour to complete a level 2 elixir. After all, although the length of time needed to refine the medicine was related to the level of the alchemy skill, the process could not be reduced. Especially the time needed to fuse the pill could only be 15 minutes. It could not be brought forward, or the pill would be scrapped. Ahem, 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 ahem. Han Kaifeng coughed lightly to remind Hanyu not to talk nonsense. Swish. White Knight, who was refining medicine in the middle of the banquet hall, made a new move. Everyone could only see the fire in front of Baye grow stronger, and a piece of grey residue was scattered by her fire with a bang. Then Baye's pair of white hands gently lifted, and with a strange rhythm, slowly pressed down on the medicinal cauldron. When her hands were close to the fallen star cauldron, her palm suddenly changed. A strange scene of clouds and mist appeared in front of all the influential people. This is Yingluo. Hanyu called out again. What is this? Yukinyi could not help but ask. It's truly natural and smooth. Little junior sister actually knew the floating clouds and flowing water pill fusion technique. Heavens. She's 10 years younger than me. I'm going to die. Hanyu suffered a huge blow and simply wanted to bump into Tofu. When they heard about the den melting technique, all the old seniors who knew how to refine medicine, except for Yufu, were petrified. This was unbelievable. This was absolutely unbelievable. Ao. F***ck. This cloud and water pill technique, how powerful is it? Explain it. To me, I don't understand. When Quan Qingmu saw his colleague's expressions, he was very anxious to know how powerful this technique was. This was because laymen like them couldn't understand all the technical terms. It was already good enough to know about the medicine concoction rain, but very few people knew about the natural cloud and flowing water pill fusion technique. Hanyu kid, quickly tell me what's the most extraordinary about this pill art. Yukinyi wanted to know the answer as well. He had almost forgotten that he had doubted Baye's talent. Hanshu, who received the order, nodded and said, to put it simply, it can shorten the time needed to fuse the pill by half. That is to say, little junior sister can form the pill in advance. In other words, Little junior sister will definitely be able to form the pill within the so-called 2 hours. What? The laymen and onlookers were all shocked. This was the first time they had heard that there was actually a way to shorten the time needed to fuse the pill. There were already people present who were demonstrating the technique to them. At this time, no one was looking at Daiwokinga anymore. Chapter 198, Chapter 198, The Super Pill Fusion Technique, 2. Chapter 198, The Super Pill Fusion Technique, 2. In everyone's eyes, there was only White Knight's pair of white hands. It was because her hands seemed to be in control of the storm of the world of the fallen star cauldron. With a flip of her hands, she could suppress the clouds. With a flip of her hands, she could stir and melt the essence of the spiritual herbs. Her movements were not only elegant but also majestic. In addition, Hanyu suddenly said, "What?" Everyone's eyes were reluctant to leave White Knight, but they all subconsciously asked in unison. Their ears were almost perked up, ready to listen to Hanyu's explanation. The pills refined using this pill fusion technique are not only first class in color, but also because the essence of the spiritual medicine is not lost, the quality and quantity of her pills are several times higher than ordinary people. Hanyu explained. Unbelievable. 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 Everyone was at a loss for words. They didn't know how to express themselves. At this moment, they all thought that they had been shocked enough and that was it. Whoosh. Baya made a new move. She threw a crimson fruit with overwhelming spiritual energy into the air. Level 3 spiritual medicine, vermilion fire fruit. Yao Kanglan said. As his voice fell, a Wuji dark flame instantly passed through the cauldron and wrapped around the vermilion fire fruit. It then began to burn the vermilion fire fruit with a scorching fire. Almost at the same time, the vermilion fire fruit shed a blood-like spiritual medicine essence, and this blood rain-like water line directly poured into the fallen star cauldron controlled by White Knight. She wants to refine a level 3 medicinal pill vermilion fire pill. Hong Feng couldn't believe it, but he took it for granted and shouted, she really is a level 3 alchemist. But she's still so young, oh my god. What? All the people present were dumbfounded. Even Yu Qinyi and Jun Wuming were dumbfounded. Because if the 15-year-old Baya was really a level 3 alchemist, then he was really unprecedented, and probably would not be able to come in the future. He was a super young level 3 alchemist master. Consume medicine and melt the pill, advancing layer by layer, little junior sister, no, you can already be my master. Hanyu had already expected Baya to be a level 3 alchemist, so he was not surprised by this. What truly shocked Hanyu was White Knight's technique of halfway fusing the essence of a level 3 spiritual medicine into a level 2 pill embryo that was about to take form. Because even he had never heard of such technology. Buzz. And the current Baya had clearly already entered the final stage of pill fusion. Within her medicinal cauldron, there was already a buzzing sound of pill waves shaking out, making people feel relaxed and happy. However, just as this was about to end, Daiwokinga, who had moved to Yufu's side, took advantage of the time when everyone's attention was on Baya and stuffed something into Yufu's hands. Bang. Baya's medicinal cauldron also exploded with a loud bang at this time. What's going on? Everyone was shocked. It's fine. This is because too much spiritual chi has been gathered in the medicinal cauldron. During the process of fusing the pill, the cauldron will inevitably explode. If it was an ordinary medicinal cauldron, it would definitely have shattered, and little junior sister's hard work would have been in vain. However, my fallen star cauldron is definitely fine. Hanyu immediately said. Swish. When White Knight stopped and the limitless dark flame dissipated, a rich pill fragrance, like the fragrance of 100 flowers blown by the spring wind, intoxicated everyone present. Chapter 199, Chapter 199, Yuri Old and Shameless, Yuri Looking for Death, 1. Chapter 199, Yuri Old and Shameless, Yuri Looking for Death, 1. This is the unique pill fragrance of a level 3 pill. She has formed a pill. Yao Kanglan said in surprise. That's great. Han Kaifeng couldn't help but clap. Following Han Kaifeng's applause, the crowd immediately burst into thunderous applause. This was praise, this was gratitude, this was applause. All the applause was dedicated to Baya, the newly promoted level 3 alchemist of the dynasty, and also the youngest level 3 alchemist in the history of the Tianqian dynasty. Congratulations to Miss Baya for becoming a third-grade alchemist grandmaster. Congratulations to Miss Baya, Yingluo. The congratulatory words were filled with recognition and respect for White Knight. That's right, respect. Even though Baya was only 15 years old, her status as a third-grade alchemist grandmaster was enough for the dignitaries present to respect her, because she was no longer a young lady, but a grandmaster who had reached the peak of alchemy. There's no conclusion yet. Whether it's a level 3 pill or not, we'll only know after the assessment. Yu Fu attacked at this moment. The enthusiastic atmosphere at the scene could not help but freeze for a moment, but then it became intense again. Such a rich and extraordinary pill fragrance can only be emitted by a pill above level 3. There's no mistake about it? Han Kaifeng said with certainty. Not bad, not bad. Yao Kanglan and the other senior alchemists all nodded in agreement. Great Ancestral Elder, this is really a level 3 elixir fragrance. Yao Kanglan said to Yu Fu. He actually hoped that the latter would not be too unsociable. After all, reality was reality. This old master isn't old enough to be blind. Whether it's true or not, this old master has his own way of deciding, it's not up to a junior like you to point fingers. Yu Fukeo didn't give him any face and refuted Yao Kanglan. Yao Kanglan, Zhen Zhen, he had nothing to say. Little junior sister, hurry up and bring the pill over. Senior brother will appraise it for you. To prevent people from talking nonsense. Han Yu wasn't afraid of Yu Fu, so he beckoned to Bai Ye. Oh, okay. Bai Ye seemed to have just returned to his senses, and her face was clearly paler than when Dai Wokinka had just finished refining the pill. What made Yu Zhekong's heart ache even more was the fact that Bai Ye swayed unsteadily the moment he stood up. This was definitely not an act. She was really exhausted. After all, he was refining a level 3 elixir, and it was completed in such a short time. However, the weak Bai Ye stopped Yu Zhekong with his eyes at once. Don't come up, Your Highness. Otherwise, people will probably say that you prepared the vermilion fire pill for me. Yu Zhekong's face turned black, but he managed to stop himself. However, when Bai Ye handed the pills to the Imperial Guard so that they could present them to Yu Qinyi, Han Yu, and the others, Yu Fu, who had been sitting there all this while, moved. Without waiting for Yu Qinyi's permission, Yu Fu snatched the 2 fiery pills that the Imperial Guards were offering with both hands, the vermilion fire pill. CC. No one had expected that Yu Fu would actually do such a snatching act in public. This Yingying was really too stupid. After all, there were so many witnesses at the scene. However, that was exactly what Yu Fu had done. In addition to his extraordinary cultivation, he had been waiting for an opportunity to strike. The Imperial Court Guard had no time to dodge and the vermilion fire pill was snatched away by him. Chapter 200, Chapter 200, Shameless Old Man, Looking for Death, 2. Chapter 200, Shameless Old Man, Looking for Death, 2. The scene was dumbfounded. It's really a level 3 pill fragrance. Yu Fu said in an angry voice. Then, before the gloomy Yu Qinyi could react, Yu Fu carefully displayed the 2 vermilion fire pills he had snatched in his hands and studied them under everyone's suspicious gazes. Yu Fu, you're presumptuous. Hurry up and present the pill to me. Seeing that the pill was fine, Yu Qinyi heaved a sigh of relief. Yes, sir. Yu Fu's face turned pale as he replied. Han Yu had already taken the pill from his hand and handed it to Yu Qinyi. At the same time, the silent Dai Wokinka suddenly kneeled down and said. Please forgive me, Your Majesty. Master must have been anxious for Kinga. That's why he did such a reckless thing in disbelief. After all, Yingluo. Our dynasty has never had such a young level 3 alchemist. I beg Your Majesty not to blame Master Yu too much. If everything is wrong, it's all Kinga's fault. Kinga should not have been so confident and challenged Miss Bai Ye. Now, she's asking for humiliation. She deserves it. Finished speaking. With a thump, Dai Wokinka prostrated herself on the ground and kowtowed to Yu Qinyi. She looked as if she was too ashamed to face anyone and was willing to admit defeat. It was a look that made her look pitiful. Han Yu, what do you think? Yu Qinyi's attention was completely drawn to the 2 vermilion fire pills in front of him and he did not even look at Dai Wokinka. As for Han Yu, who was being questioned, he was completely focused on identifying the pill. When he heard the question, he nodded his head repeatedly and said, she's of excellent appearance. She's the best of her kind. That's right. The rarest thing is the heat control of the 2 pills. The color is of the same standard, which is even rarer. Yao Kanglan, who also had the right to comment, echoed from the side. Good, good. Although this one is a layman, I also feel that it's not bad. All the medicine refining ministers, please take a look. Yu Qinyi said in admiration. At the same time, he suddenly emphasized, in case Elder Yu's beloved minister is not convinced and says that I am biased towards my future daughter-in-law. Upon hearing this. Many thanks, Your Majesty. A large number of old alchemist officials went up to appraise the pills joyfully. The 5th family, including Dai Wu Qingshang and the others, all looked pale. Ims was to cause you many s words not already I announce TNE results or TNE competition. In other words, the 5th family had no hope of winning. Their family's eldest young lady Dai Wokinka had defeated Jianxia. Seeing that all the powerful officials in the imperial court were praising Bai Ye, Yu Kong stood up and was about to hug the stubborn person who was standing in the middle of the banquet hall. Why did it crack? Han Yu's cry of surprise caused Yu Kong to stop in his tracks. Whoosh. I didn't do anything, I didn't touch it. One of the deacons from the Heavenly Hospital, who was the last to evaluate the vermilion fire pill, explained in a panic. The two fire-colored pills that were placed on the table beside Yu Qinyi's seat of honor cracked at a speed visible to the naked eye and collapsed into a small pile of powder. What's going on? Yu Qinyi's face darkened as he turned to look at Han Yu, who was still engrossed in his research. However, before Han Yu could answer, Yu Fu spoke first. Ha! There's no need for research. This little girl must be eager for quick success and wants to forcefully transform the level 2 elixir pill into a level 3 elixir pill. Chapter 201, Chapter 201, Chapter 201. Wiping them out in one go, 1. Chapter 201, Chapter 201. Wiping them out in one go, 1. As soon as he finished his words, he felt a chill on his neck. A hand like the king of hell had grabbed his neck tightly. Is that so? However, this king believes that it was caused by your interference. Yu Kong's frosty voice rang out in Yu Fu's ears, word by word. The latter's neck was being strangled by him, as long as he was willing. He could immediately kill this old man. Yu Fu's expression changed drastically, and he immediately activated a protective gunpowder talisman on the spot. He even activated the Xian Qi in his body in an attempt to escape from Yu Chang's control. Swish. Yu Kong only needed to exert a little force in his palm to swallow the explosive talisman. Not only that, the celestial qi that burst out from Yu Fu's body was instantly suppressed back into his danshan. And then, no. Let go. Help. Yu Fu, who had been arrogant before, was now like an old rooster that had lost a battle. He was lifted into the air by Yu Kong. As his neck was being strangled and he was unable to activate his celestial qi to protect his body, Yu Fu, who was on the verge of suffocation, widened his old eyes so much that his eyeballs almost popped out. He looked like he was about to die. Master! Dai Wukinga shrieked. Ancestral Grand Elder. The Imperial Academy of Medicine's people were also shocked. Kong, stop. This is the wedding hall. Yu Qinyi couldn't let Yu Kong kill Yu Fu just like that, and his words had really hit Yu Kong's sore spot. Humph, he snorted. Yu Kong snorted coldly and let go of the dying Yu Fu. Cough, 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 cough. Yu Fu, who had lost half of his life, coughed to death. Dai Wukinga hurriedly went forward to help him calm down. She even said with a face full of tears, Master, it's all my fault. I've harmed you. But you're a dignified figure of the Heavenly Hospital. How could you do such a despicable thing? Master, how could you? Upon hearing this, Dai Wu Qingshang, who originally thought that he was done for, immediately knelt down and shouted. Not bad. His Majesty. Elder Yu is a great master of our dynasty. Even though his temperament is a little strange, he has never done anything despicable. The reason why he attacked Miss Baye before was because he suspected the source of her fire seed. I beg your Majesty to uphold justice. Your Majesty, please make a clear decision. Some of the vassals of the fifth family knelt down one after another. This pill doesn't show any signs of being tampered with. Just like Han Yu, Yao Kanglin, who was also researching the vermilion fire pill powder, suddenly spoke. As the director of the Heavenly Hospital, Yao Kanglin had to protect the reputation of the Heavenly Hospital despite Yu Fu's previous actions. Dai Wukinga was right. The person who could calm the sea in the Heavenly Hospital was Yu Fu. If Yu Fu was involved in a scandal, the Heavenly Hospital would lose face. Are you sure? Yu Qinyi did not believe Yao Kanglin's analysis. I'm sure. I didn't find any traces of profound qi on these dregs other than Miss Baye's. I also didn't find any aura of unknown spiritual medicine other than the spiritual medicine required for the vermilion fire pill. Yao Kanglin knelt down and reported. Han Yu, what do you say? Seeing that Han Yu had also stopped tasting the medicinal dregs, Yu Qianqian immediately asked. The dean is right. Han Yu's and Yao Kanglin's test results were actually the same. This meant that Yingluo. Did White Knight really fall short of success because of his eagerness for quick success? Such words. No matter how amazing Baye's alchemy skills were, from the results, it seemed like Dai Wukinga won. You have good eyes. Although this old man doesn't like this girl, I would never do such a despicable thing. So, this competition should be the victory of this old man's disciple. Yu Fu, who had already caught his breath, immediately said with confidence. Not necessarily, Baye's voice, however, was calm at this moment. Chapter 202, Chapter 202, Chapter 202. Wiping them out in one go, 2. Chapter 202, Chapter 202. Wiping them out in one go, 2. Swish. Everyone's gazes instantly swept towards White Knight in unison. However, Yu Fu opened his mouth and scolded, "Little girl, you've lost. Don't try to play any tricks. Senior brother Han, you really can't taste any special medicine in the dregs." However, Baya ignored Yu Fu. She only looked at Han Yu. Han Yu was slightly taken aback. He subconsciously picked up the medicinal dregs on the table and tasted them. He then continued to ponder, as if he was trying hard to sense something. "Miss Shiroya, there's no need for you to put up a last-ditch struggle. This is the way the appraisal works, so you've lost." Daiwo Kinga, however, changed her sobbing tone and said to Baya in surprise, "Your Highness, take down the fifth young lady and control her right hand." Baya looked at Yuja Kong and said quickly. Daiwo Kinga's eyes flickered. Almost subconsciously, she clenched her right hand and wanted to eliminate something. However, she was still too slow. Roar. This was because Yu Jiming's little white flood dragon had already flashed out from his sleeve and completed Baya's instructions to him. Then, before the crowd could react, Baya was already standing in front of Daiwo Kinga. At the same time, she lowered her head and sniffed the latter's right hand, which was controlled by the little white flood dragon. Then, she said slowly, "There are remnants of the yin fire fruit's aura on the fifth young lady's palm. The spiritual liquid of the yin fire fruit can develop the aura of the vermilion fire fruit after special refinement. In this case, it can be fused with the vermilion fire fruit's spiritual liquid to refine the yin-yang double fiend fruit. It's highly toxic and no great mystic cultivator can resist it. However, if the vermilion fire fruit is contaminated with the spiritual liquid of the yin fire fruit during the early stages of the pill formation, the yin and yang will not be able to harmonize. This will cause the structure of the vermilion fire pill's medicinal power to collapse, and it will eventually be crushed into dregs. Fifth young lady, am I right? Or may I ask Grandmaster Yu, is what this junior said right?" When Baya finished his sentence, he looked straight at Yu Fu and said sarcastically, "Grandmaster Yu's methods are not underhanded at all. They're simply brilliant." Yu Fu's face turned green, and he immediately cursed, "You ignorant brat. If you dare to talk nonsense again, do you believe this old man will not ridicule you?" Roar. The little white dragon let out a breath, and the huge pressure of a dragon scared Yu Fu so much that he immediately shut up. Whether or not I'm speaking without thinking, Senior Marshal Brother Han will immediately be able to tell. After all, no matter how the yin fire fruit disguises itself, it will definitely release its medicinal breath after a quarter of an hour. White Knight exposed him. "You're talking nonsense. You've clearly lost and the pill is wasted, but you still want to slander me and my master?" Naturally, Daiwo Kinga refused to admit it and even clung onto Baya. "What yin fire fruit's aura, you can just apply it? I didn't know that you could refine the vermilion fire pill, so how could I have prepared the yin fire fruit? You're just trying to pin a crime on me." But just as Daiwo Kinga's voice fell, Han Yu, who had been fiddling for a while, suddenly used a strange fire-colored rune to purify a pinch of the dregs. And then dash. Bang. With a loud explosion, two weak auras clearly spread out. Everyone subconsciously sniffed. It's the aura of the yin fire fruit. There's also a wisp of akaseya. Han Kaifeng's eyebrows twitched, and he swallowed the rest of his words and turned to look at Yao Kanglan. Yao Kanglan's expression was very ugly, but he had to admit it and announce it, "That is the aura of Kinkin's ancestral great elder's innate spiritual fire." Whoosh. The scene was in an uproar. Chapter 203, Chapter 203, Face Slapping, 1. Chapter 203, Face Slapping, 1. Even though they didn't know how Han Yu had done it, everyone knew what it meant to burn the yin fire fruit and remnant talisman's fire seed aura from White Knight's dregs. Wasn't this proof of White Knight's deduction? However, how could Yu Fu, who had put in so much effort, just give up like this? Therefore, he still refused to admit it and snorted coldly, "It's the first time I've seen the means of the Heaven's Will Mansion. They can actually evolve my fire seed aura out of thin air." Yu Fu's words were similar to Daiwo Kinga's denial just now. The two of them were indeed master and disciple. But unfortunately, when Yu Fu's voice fell, swish, Han Yu's burnt rune suddenly transformed into a sinister figure that was half covered by a cloak. As soon as the figure appeared, everyone felt a ghostly aura hit them in the face. Senior Old Ghost. Many influential people at the scene cried out involuntarily. However, this ghastly figure left as quickly as it came. The moment everyone fixed their eyes on it, they saw nothing. "This is Laoai." Yu Qinyi was a little confused. "Reporting to your majesty, this is a gunpowder talisman given to me by my master. It contains a trace of my master's will. Just now, I was unable to distinguish the karma in the powder, so I asked my master to come out of the mountain." Han Qi replied. Only then did Yu Qinyi come to a realization. So it was Senior Old Ghost who attacked from a distance. Everyone at the scene also came to their senses and praised, I didn't expect Senior Old Ghost's methods to have reached such a superb realm. He can actually appraise medicinal pills through the gunpowder talisman. That's right, that's right. Everyone was full of praise, while Yu Fu's face was ashen. At that moment, Yu Qinyi was in a difficult position. Yu Fu. This old official is Qian. Umph. How dare you act like a demon in front of me? Yu Qinyi's dragon might was so powerful that everyone in the banquet hall felt the air around them freeze. Yu Fu pursed his lips, but before he could open his mouth, he felt a dragon's shadow in front of him, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it pounced at him. Kneel down. Yu Qinyi shouted. Yu Fu only felt the dragon's shadow in front of him roaring at him. A monstrous dragon pressure instantly crushed him to his knees with a plop. As the oldest and most powerful person in the heavenly hospital, it had been a long time since he knelt down in front of someone. Even Yu Qinyi treated him with respect after he became a level 4 alchemist. However, he had failed today. Dai Wukinga. Of course, Yu Qinyi did not let Dai Wukinga off the hook. He had wanted to raise this girl to be the future mother of the nation, but he did not expect her to be such a terrible person. Dai Wukinga, the holy phoenix rain, opened her mouth. She had wanted to use her signature weeping beauty to persuade him to stay, but in that instant, she was stung by the disappointment and disdain in Yu Qinyi's eyes. In the past, Dai Wukinga had always seen admiration and satisfaction in the eyes of the most authoritative figures in the two dynasties. This was also why she had always been so sure that she would marry Yu Juchang in the future. Plop. 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 The little white flood dragon, who was originally holding onto Dai Wukinga, had let go of her. This caught Dai Wukinga off guard and she directly hit the cold floor with a bang. This made her feel as if she had fallen from the clouds into an ice-cold purgatory. Chapter 204, Chapter 204, Face Slapping, 2. Chapter 204, Face Slapping, 2. However, according to her plan, she should have stood at the top of the banquet hall in the end. She should have stepped on all the women's envy and become the most respected ninth princess consort in the dynasty. After all, it was a fact that the crown prince was dethroned, and the most powerful prince in the dynasty was the ninth prince. Then, the ninth princess's future position was self-evident. Buzz, it shouldn't be like this. What Dai Wukinga couldn't bear was not the coldness from the floor, but the coldness from the fact that she would never have a chance with the royal family. What was even more terrifying was that if today's matter was true, her reputation would be ruined. In the future, not only would she never be able to enjoy the admiration of those young talents, but she would also never be able to see the envy and jealousy of those lowly women towards her. In fact, she would be spurned or pitied by them. Dai Wukinga couldn't help but shiver at the thought of the future. Yu Fu, Dai Wukinga, do you and your disciple admit to your crimes? Yu Qinyi's voice did not fluctuate, as this was not an interrogation, but a conviction. I don't know, but your majesty can't be ridiculed just by the words of the Heaven's Will Mansion. Yu Fu was not willing to accept this. Of course, he was not willing, because once he admitted his guilt, he knew that he would lose not only the glory of the past, but also the fame and fortune that he held in his hands. Impudent. The Heaven's Will Mansion is the #1 divine mansion in our dynasty. How can you profane it again and again, you old thief? Slap his mouth. Yu Qinyi shouted angrily. Yu Fu's pupils contracted. The imperial guards had already stepped forward and were ready to take action. Don't you dare. How could Yu Fu give up? He raised his eyes and glared at the imperial court guard. At this time, Yao Kanglan and the other people from the heavenly hospital were preparing to plead for Yu Fu. After all, no matter what the latter did, they had to try their best to maintain the dignity of the heavenly hospital's old seniors. Unfortunately, you fools don't you dare only made Yu Qinyi even more furious. Beat him up? Let's see who dares to plead for this old thief. I'm usually too easy to talk to. Fight. Yu Qinyi said angrily. Pa. The imperial court guard who had made a move immediately raised his hand and slapped down without any worries. The slap landed. Yu Fu, who was originally putting on airs, was simply dumbfounded. Although he wasn't born into a particularly distinguished family, he had a good talent for refining medicine and was accepted into the heavenly hospital early on to be carefully trained, so he didn't suffer much. He had become famous when he was young, and by his middle age, he had gained both fame and reputation. Later on, when he became a level 4 alchemist grandmaster, he was even supported to the heavens. So when had he ever been treated like this? Pa. However, in reality, the imperial court guard rudely slapped Yu Fu again, causing him to return to reality from his state of confusion and disbelief. Before he could come back to his senses, the imperial guard's left and right slaps had already landed. It wasn't that Yu Fu had never thought of resisting. However, Yingluo. Tisk, tisk, tisk. The sighs that came from the scene from time to time made Yu Fu feel that he had lost all his face. How could he have the spirit to resist? Yu Fu had never thought that he would end up like this in his old age. He was clearly the highest grade alchemist in the dynasty. Shouldn't the imperial family be flattering him and hoping that he would refine pills well so that one day he could save their lives? Yu Fu didn't understand. Because Yu Fu thought too highly of himself, he had completely forgotten that all the rankings in Tianqian dynasty were after the Heaven's Will Mansion was eliminated. There would always be Heaven's Will Mansion above him. The alchemists in the Heaven's Will Mansion, even Han Yu, could probably crush him. He had forgotten that he had been blinded by fame and fortune, and had even dreamed of stepping on the Heaven's Will Mansion. Don't stop. You don't even put me in your eyes, you're lawless. You can ye. Added angrily. Chapter 205, Chapter 205, Dog Bites Dog, 1. Chapter 205, Dog Bites Dog, 1. After the Imperial Guard slapped him dozens of times. Yu Fu's face had not swelled up because of his years of cultivation. However, his hair crown had already scattered, and the hair that had a chance of turning gray hung down on his red old face. No one present had ever seen Yu Fu in such a state. Even a tough man like Quan Qingyu could not help but sigh and say, "Why bother to come here? All these years of glory and fame have blinded Senior Yu's eyes." The Heavenly Investigation Department's Minister of State, Ho Wenqing, had always been the most sensitive to news, so he was actually the most aware of Yu Fu's changes. Ho Wenqing knew that Yu Fu wasn't like this in the past. It was all because of the big dive out of fame and fortune that this old senior couldn't see the environment he was in. Hearing this, all the powerful ministers fell silent. Some were thinking, some were rejoicing, but Chen Bizhu was wiping cold sweat. "Principal Chen, what are you doing?" The newly appointed Minister of Rites and Music, Fan Wenli, could not help but ask in a low voice. "It's fine," Chen Bizhu replied with a sigh of relief before quickly recovering, but his heart couldn't help but beat wildly. It was not for any other reason but because he suddenly became alert. There was probably an inexplicable problem with the matter of him bringing Cheng Xian Heaven to meet the sage. If Bai Ye didn't show her talent in alchemy at the last moment, and if Xian Tian didn't meet the emperor to give her the marriage contract, Bai Ye would've. The fact that Chen Bizhu could be the principal of Genius Academy proved that he wasn't someone easy to deal with. Coupled with the warning of the word hoodwinking that Ho Wenqing had just said, Chen Bizhu instantly thought of many key points. When he thought about what had happened recently, he vaguely felt that it was awkward. This matter was not that simple. At the thought of this, Chen Bizhu was quite suspicious. He glanced at the back of the crowd, at Qing Xiantian, who had come to the banquet with him. He saw that the latter was looking at Yu Fu, who had been tortured, in shock. It seemed that there was nothing wrong. "Sigh, I hope this child's mind isn't so complicated." Chen Bizhu sighed and heard Yu Qinyi berating Dai Wokinga. His attention turned back to the center of the banquet. After all, Dai Wokinga was related to the fifth family. But what Chen Bizhu did not know was that when his eyes swept over Qing Xiantian, the latter's back was already wet. He was constantly restraining the fear in his heart. No one knew that when Dai Wu Qingshang revealed his affair with Bai Ye, he was already prepared to go on his knees and beg the emperor to help him and Bai Ye. Qing Xiantian felt a lingering fear and muttered regretfully, "I almost died." He was so close to confessing his love to Bai Ye, who had said before, "If you lose, you'd rather not get married than share your husband with others." Even if Bai Ye didn't accept him, Qing Xiantian could guarantee that the current emperor would never let Yu Zhekong take Bai Ye. As long as the opponent wasn't Yu Zhekong, Qing Xiantian had an absolute chance of winning. "We failed at the last step." Qing Xian Heaven was unwilling to accept this, especially when they saw that Bai Ye's talent was even more extraordinary than they had imagined. However, seeing that Yu Fu had already suffered and the fifth clan seemed to be in trouble, Qing Xiantian had no choice but to suppress their unwillingness and try their best not to show any suspicious traces. However, at this moment, "Your Majesty, I'm sure you're right. Kinga would never give the yin fire fruit to Master. Kinga would never do such a thing. Master, you have to testify for me." Dai Wu Kinga actually sold the remaining talismans. Chapter 206, Chapter 206, Dog Bites Dog, 2. Chapter 206, Dog Bites Dog, 2. Everyone was stunned. Even Yu Fu himself was stunned. Because no one had expected Dai Wu Kinga to say such words. After all, everyone knew that Yu Fu's appearance here today was entirely for her. "Your Majesty, you know Kinga's character. Since Kinga's skills are inferior to others, it's fine that she lost. She would never do such a thing to frame others. Kinga has already admitted defeat before, so there's no need for this. Please investigate." After Dai Wu Kinga finished speaking, she bowed to Yu Fu and said, "Master, Kinga is willing to accept the punishment on your behalf, but Kinga does not want to be wronged because it disgraces our family. Please understand Kinga's painstaking efforts for the sake of the family. Yufu, he. No one knew better than him. Although he had also thought of using the yin fire fruit to destroy Bai Yes pill formation, he really did not have the fruit on him. It was indeed given to him by Daiwo Kinga. Master. Daiwo Kinga looked at Yufu with pleading eyes. She only hoped that the latter would take all the blame for the sake of their master-disciple relationship. After all, she was still young, and she still had a long way to go. But he was already old, and after being slapped in the face in public like this, he was afraid that he would not be able to live a good life for the rest of his life. However, as long as he was willing to take all the blame, Daiwo Kinga swore with her eyes that she would take good care of him. After all, he was her master. Yufu, is this the truth? At this moment, Yu Qinyi followed Daiwo Kinga's words and questioned Yufu, as if he believed Daiwo Kinga's words. He, if that's the case, then this king's fiancé was naughty enough to apply the yin fire fruit's aura on the fifth young lady. Yu Zhekong was unhappy. Yu Zhekong knew that Yu Qinyi's question did not necessarily mean that he believed Daiwo Kinga. He just did not want to beat Daiwo Kinga too hard, or else it would destroy the balance of power in the imperial city. But even if he understood the key points, Yu Zhekong was still unhappy. Because if Daiwo Kinga was not guilty, that meant that his Xiaoye was guilty. Did she really apply medicine on someone's wound secretly? How could this be? Yu Qinyi was having a headache. That's right, the yin fire fruit indeed belongs to this sinful official. The fifth young lady's hands were contaminated by the yin fire fruit's aura only because she had previously helped this sinful official. Yu Fu calmly said. However, in his words, he had directly changed his disciple to the fifth young lady. As long as one was not an idiot, they would be able to understand the meaning behind this. I was blinded by fame and fortune and refused to believe that a junior could suppress me. The disciple I chose felt that this was a slap to my face, so I didn't want Miss Baye to win and only wanted the disciple I chose to stand out. In this way, this guilty subject's master will also have some face. We, master and disciple, are the two figures of the old and the new generation that command the alchemist world in this imperial city. Now that things had developed to this point, Yu Fu was ready to risk everything, or perhaps he was ready to risk everything. He spoke out all the words in his heart, and finally sighed and bowed. I'm foolish. Please punish me, Your Majesty. Your Majesty, please let Kinga take the punishment on behalf of Master. Daiwo Kinga quickly said. She was surprised and happy at the same time. She was surprised that Yu Fu had called her Daiwo young lady, which made her feel that something was wrong. She was happy that she could finally push the blame away. Daiwo young lady is wrong. I am no longer your master and I don't need you to take the punishment on my behalf. The relationship between you and me as master and disciple ends here. Yu Fu said indifferently. Chapter 207, Chapter 207, Chapter 207 Beating up White Lotus. Chapter 207, Chapter 207 Beating up White Lotus. Master. Daiwo Kinga looked at Yu Fu in shock. Yu Fu also raised his eyes to look at this disciple whom he had really admired before. Take care of yourself. He was already so old. If he had not been blinded by fame and fortune, he would not have done those things. Now that he had been slapped in the face, he was much more clear-headed. This disciple's betrayal especially made him more clear-headed, but this was the disciple he had chosen, so he could only grit his teeth and swallow it. Otherwise, if another master-disciple fight were to take place, he could forget about keeping his old face. He only wanted to end all of this as soon as possible. As for this disciple, he did not dare to acknowledge her anymore. Pa. However, White Knight started clapping at this moment. Even though the fifth young lady's storage ring has been detected by His Highness's little White, but Elder Yu loves his disciple so much that he would rather bear everything for her. His Highness and I have decided not to use the storage ring as evidence. As White Knight spoke, he opened his palm and presented a storage ring with the emblem of the Daiwo family to everyone. This. Daiwo Kinga's face froze. She had already distinguished from the aura on the storage ring that it was indeed her item. But how did her storage ring end up in Bai Yes' hands? But wait. Something was wrong. Daiwo Kinga remembered that she had erased the aura of the yin fire fruit from her storage ring. It was when the white flood dragon was controlling her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said that the aura on her hand had been wiped away. After all, the storage ring was controlled by spiritual power. She had the chance. Unfortunately. Swish. At this moment, Bai Yes started to burn with limitless dark flames, trying to destroy the storage ring. No, how could Daiwo Kinga just sit and wait for death? She immediately pounced up and wanted to snatch the storage ring in Bai Yes' palm. She wanted to prove that there was no yin fire fruit's aura in it. But the moment she moved. Impudent. After executing Yu Fu, the imperial court guard who had been watching over this restless master and disciple pair stepped directly on Daiwo Kinga's calf. Plop! Daiwo Kinga was caught off guard and felt a pain in her back leg. With another bang her entire body came into close contact with the ground. However, she could not care about her sorry state at this time. She looked up and saw Baya looking at her with a faint smile. In Baya's palm, the storage ring had already been burnt black. Don't burn it, there's no Kazeya in it. Daiwo Kinga's instinct was to immediately activate the raging nine heavens white lotus flame and aim it at Baya's palm. Because this was evidence. If she was burned, she would really not be able to explain herself. Before Yujikong could make a move, Baya, who was already prepared, directly increased the size of the limitless dark flame. Buzz! The boundless limitless dark flame, with a faint demonic red color, instantly swallowed the fire that Daiwo Kinga threw at him. Then a scene that made everyone present gasp appeared. Swish! Almost at the same time, the limitless dark flame released by Baya, after devouring the nine heavens white lotus flame, which had already shown weakness halfway, pounced towards Daiwo Kinga with lightning speed. Following Daiwo Kinga's scream, everyone saw in disbelief. A cluster of white lotus-shaped flames was pulled out of Daiwo Kinga's body and then swallowed by the surging limitless dark flame. It was swallowed. Chapter 208, Chapter 208, Exterminate the Weeds and Eliminate the Roots, 1. Chapter 208, Exterminate the Weeds and Eliminate the Roots, 1. Gilugilugilug. The most terrifying thing was that the limitless dark flame was still spreading out at this time. The human-like Gilugilug sound simply shocked everyone present. That included Yukinyi and Jun Wuming. Even Baya herself was momentarily stunned. She clearly did not expect that the limitless dark flame would actually run out by itself and do such a strange thing. However, what was done was done. Baya calmed down very quickly and kept the limitless dark flame back into her body. Almost instantly, she could sense. The Wuji dark flame had become a little stronger. Clang! Clang! This scene happened so quickly that everyone in the banquet hall could not react in time. If it was not for Daiwo Kinga's pained cries, everyone would probably have been stunned for a while. B. Starred. Daiwo Qingshang reacted almost instinctively. He smacked out at Baya, a powerful palm. As the head of the Daiwo family, Daiwo Qingshang's cultivation was extraordinary. He was a half-step Qingxian. If White Knight was hit by him, he would probably choke. Impudent. This time, Qin Bang made his move. Almost at the same time as Daiwo Qingshang's palm strike, Qin Bang's palm strike collided with Daiwo Qingshang's. Boom. How could Daiwo Qingshang be a match for Qin Man? He was instantly sent flying. With a loud bang, he crashed into the wall of the banquet hall. Daiwo Qingshang was heavily injured and spat out blood on the spot. Master! The people of Daiwo family quickly went forward and wanted to help Daiwo Qingshang up. He had never thought. Shua shua shua. A large row of Qin Manor guards immediately surrounded the injured Daiwo Qingshang, looking as if they were going to arrest him. This scene instantly infuriated the fifth clan. However, before the fifth family could explode. His Majesty is here. How can you, the fifth family, be allowed to act so atrociously again and again in my Qin residence? Don't blame me for being impolite. Qin Bing's cold voice carried the might of an expert and crushed the people of the Daiwo family without any trace of politeness. These words made the heavily injured Daiwo Qingshang want to vomit even more blood. Qinpo, you've gone too far with your bullying, Your Majesty. He had never expected that Qinpo would actually dare to injure an important official of the imperial court on the spot. Enough. Qingshang, as the head of the fifth family, it's fine that you didn't raise your children well, but you actually dared to try to hurt my daughter-in-law in front of me. Your crime is unforgivable. You cut off Daiwo Qingshang's hope. Daiwo Qingshang's eyes widened. The emperor is teasing Geer. She's teasing her. That's her own fault. Yu was clearly protecting Baya. There was no other reason other than the fact that Baya was enough to make Yu value her so much. Whether it was her cultivation talent, her alchemy talent, or even her final monstrous and terrifying ability. Daiwo Kinga, who was almost dying from the pain of having her fire seed forcibly taken away from the emperor's Kazeya, would never have thought that her heavy injury would actually be exchanged with a "you brought this upon yourself." Yeer, are you alright? Yu asked Baya with concern. Baya, who was completely fine and had even gotten a lot of benefits, naturally shook his head and said, I'm fine. It's just a little tantrum. But what? Also, that's not the right way to address yourself. Yu felt that he was blind and that his son's judgment was not as good as his. He had almost pushed his talented daughter-in-law out of the door. This commoner wouldn't dare. After all, just as Lord Daiwo said, this commoner does carry a marriage contract. White Knight said. Chapter 209, Chapter 209, Exterminate the weeds and eliminate the roots. 2. Chapter 209, Exterminate the weeds and eliminate the roots. 2. CC. All the influential people in the audience were stunned. Even Dai Wuching Shang and Dai Wuching Ji, who had been temporarily ignored, looked at Bai Ye in disbelief, who was foolishly confessing. In reality, even if Dai Wuching didn't want to admit it, he had already known that Bai Ye's talent was enough for Yu Qinyi to show some favoritism after he was severely injured by Qin Mo on the spot and was not appeased by Yu Qinyi. And under this kind of favoritism, not to mention Bai Ye's engagement, even if she was a married woman, it would probably be settled properly. So at this time, Dai Wuching would not invite humiliation to himself, so why would he use the engagement as a matter? However, White Knight himself was. Yet, he exposed this matter. Could it be that this Miss Bai Ye really doesn't want to marry into the imperial family? Everyone couldn't help but think so, but they quickly rejected this idea. After all, if White Knight really thought this way, there was no need for her to be so high profile and reveal all her talent, because she was clearly doing this to win. She was going to crush Dai Wuching fair and square, and announce to the world that she, White Knight, was the most outstanding woman in Tianqian dynasty, and that she was completely worthy of the existence of a god like the ninth prince. Then why did she do that? Was he really stupid enough to confess everything? But this kind of thing was clearly better to discuss it in private as a family. Saying it in public like this was awkward. 1-1. The dignitaries looked at White Knight in confusion, not knowing what this little girl was up to. Even Yu Qinyi did not understand. He frowned, but at that moment, he felt that since this girl was so talented, she could not be stupid. In addition, he had previously mistreated White Knight, and now wanted to compensate her, so he wanted to see what she wanted, so he had the intention of allowing White Knight to mess around. Yet, Bai Ye knelt down before Yu Qinyi as if he had admitted his guilt under everyone's gaze. She even kowtowed and said, I am indeed childhood sweethearts with my fiancé. I met him when I was 5 and got engaged to him when I was 6. Original, I was on waitins for me to turn 18 before we 20 married. Whoosh. When the powerful officials heard this, they did not know what to say in their hearts. This one, sigh, it was not easy to respond. This seems to be a suitable situation for playing dead and pretending not to hear anything. However, Bai Ye's words took a sharp turn. But when my ex-fiancé forced me to die in my house's courtyard, there was only enmity between us. There's no love. Back in Tong City, I made a blood oath, when my cultivation is strong, that will be the day he dies. Today, I, Bai Ye, ask your majesty to make the decision and let Bai Ye kill this thief. At the end of his sentence, Bai Ye's entire body was filled with sharpness. The murderous aura around him was simply ineffaceable. It was obvious that he had a deep blood feud with the ex-fiancé she was talking about. Just as she finished her sentence, I, Mu Yunzhen, the commander of the Ministry of War, can testify. Mu Yunzhen stood up and said, Gu Changhe, a rookie on the rookie list, can be my witness. Gu Changhe also walked to the center of the banquet hall and knelt down in front of Yu Qinyi. Even if he was actually having stage fright, when he thought of how Bai Ye had been forced to that point in Tong City, he stood up without hesitation. I have a memorial to report that the governor of the Cyan Cloud State, Qinghea, has committed a crime by killing Bai Zhan, a villager of my Prajna village, and killing Bai Ye, a girl of my Prajna village. At this moment, Qin Bang stood up and bowed before Yu Qinyi. At this moment, White Knight was no longer fighting alone. Chapter 210, Chapter 210, Exterminate the weeds and eliminate the roots, 3. Chapter 210, Exterminate the weeds and eliminate the roots, 3. After that, the things that Qing Xian Heaven thought were done very carefully were all exposed one by one. Even some witnesses who had been killed were found by Qin Bang. As such, the Qing family's attempt to kill Bai Zhan, Qing Xiantian and Lu Minjian's attempt to kill Bai Ye, and everything else had been revealed by Qin Mo's memorial. As a result, there was a huge uproar at the scene. There's actually such a cruel and unscrupulous person in this world. He actually plotted to harm someone's lonely old man and grandson. He's simply heartless. Bah! There's no conscience to speak of, how can you say that he's completely heartless? Some of the kind-hearted nobles spurned. However, there were also people who were used to it and discussed dash. Since ancient times, the strong have always been respected. There are many greedy strong people who plunder the cultivation methods, Xian skills, and weapons of the weak clans. It can only be said that old man Bai Zhan didn't know people well and led the wolf into the mayfly. That's right. Just look at Miss Bai Ye's achievements and you can see that her family's cultivation technique is not simple. It's understandable that the Qing family would be tempted by it. That's right. But now that Bai Ye is stronger and has Lord Qin's support, as well as the ninth prince's protection, the Qing family is going to be in deep trouble. And just as everyone had expected, the Qing family had been stripped of their official status and thrown into prison. As for Qing Xianheaven, at this time, he had no choice but to walk through the crowd to the center of the banquet hall, waiting for his death, and bear the spurn and disgust from all sides. He looks like a talented person and has excellent talent. I thought I wanted to take him in as my son-in-law, but I didn't expect him to be such a sinister and cunning person. But I don't understand. This thief already knows that Baiye has become famous in the imperial city and is about to be engaged to the 9th prince. Why would he still dare to come? Hee, everyone, why don't you think about the 5th family exposing Miss Baiye's marriage contract? Who knows, this person might have already hooked up with the 5th family. No way, Yingluo. In the face of these criticisms, Qing Xiantian, who should have been in a sorry state, admitted his guilt very quickly. He knelt very properly and even looked calm. This nature made many people look at him with surprise. However, they didn't know that even though Qing Xianheaven had reached the end of its line, it still wasn't willing to be defeated like this. It was because it felt that it still had a chance. So in the end Qing Xiantian said very calmly, no matter what sinners say about the past, the conclusion has already been reached. Sinners have indeed almost forced Miss Baiye to death. It is understandable that she wants to kill me. I am willing to die in her hands. His words were very artistic, as if all the crimes he and his Qing family had committed had been forcefully held up by Qin Mo. He was actually very affectionate to Baiye, so he had no regrets dying in her hands. But, Qing Xiantian paused and said, is Miss Baiye willing to fight with the sinners, a fair and square battle? After all, regardless of whether you admit it or not, your inheritance was incited by my Qing Xianheaven. I have the right to request to die under this power. Take a look. This was the Qing Xianheaven. It was as if everything he had done, and everything the Qing family had done, was all for Baiye. Baiye should kowtow to thank him instead of Hua. Well said. Yet, there were still people who agreed with Qing Xianheaven. The voice that echoed Qing Xianheaven came from outside the banquet hall. Another person had arrived, and as soon as this person's voice rang out, the eyes of all the 5th clan members in the banquet hall lit up. Especially Daiwo Kinga. And Qing Xianheavenly Kazaya. Chapter 211, Chapter 211, Shocking the World with the Blue Luan, 1. Chapter 211, Shocking the World with the Blue Luan, 1. An old man with white hair and a walking stick trembled as he walked into the banquet hall with the help of a younger member of the Daiwo family. The patriarch of the 5th family, the 5th dragon. See? That old man is actually still alive. As soon as this person appeared, some people at the scene couldn't help but exclaim. No wonder the 5th family's development is still so rapid. It turns out that this old man really hasn't died yet. He's been stabilizing the entire 5th family behind the scenes. Yun Chongming clenched his fists, his eyes full of shock. In the imperial city, anyone who knew the 5th family would know who the 5th dragon was. Because the 5th family was able to become one of the 4 great families of the imperial city, all because of him. The 5th dragon. He was once the #1 expert in the Tianqian dynasty. When the late emperor was still alive, he was the invincible general of the Tianqian dynasty. His entire life's military achievements were outstanding, and he still had a high reputation in the military. I am the 5th dragon, and I pay my respects to your majesty. However, the 5th dragon was not arrogant at all. As soon as he walked to the center of the banquet hall, he knelt down and kowtowed. Rise, old general. You would not be too harsh on this old hero of the dynasty, even if what the 5th family did today disappointed him. Thank you, your majesty. The 5th dragon stood up shakily, but before he could stand still, he knelt down again with a dong sound. This time, he knelt down with great force. Yu Qinyi's eyes narrowed slightly as Daiwo Longhai announced, I am guilty. I didn't know that there were people among my descendants who schemed against me after losing, who betrayed their masters for glory, and who disrespected his majesty in public. I am ashamed. See. Many people were stunned when they heard Dawu's words, because he was confessing on behalf of the 5th family. Moreover, the crime of betraying one's master for glory had not been determined yet. After all, although this crime had almost been confirmed due to the storage ring incident, the 5th family could deny it without evidence. Although the punishment of betraying one's master for glory would not cause the Daiwo family to suffer much actual losses, it would cause Daiwo Kinga's reputation to be ruined. Old ancestor, Kinga. Daiwo Kinga struggled to explain, because she couldn't bear this. She knew that she could lose. After all, she had no choice but to admit defeat. But the image that she had painstakingly built in the past could not be destroyed. This was all she had left. She had lost her talent and her pride. All she had left was her image, which she could maintain. The 5th clan doesn't have an unjust descendant like you who betrays your master for glory. Dai Wulonghai's words had completely shattered all of Dai Wukinga's hopes. Because the fifth Dragon Sea's words had not only completely convicted Dai Wukinga, but it had also completely convicted her. He even expressed his intention to expel her from the fifth family. This Kazaya. Dai Wukinga's face turned pale. Old general, you're too kind. Please get up. Yu Qinyi's eyes softened. After the fifth Dragon Sea thanked the Dragon King for his kindness, he slowly stood up with the help of the young man who was kneeling behind him. However, his eyes fell on Bayet. This young lady must be the one with the monstrous talent who won against Kinga and devoured her innate spiritual fire. Young lady Bayet. The fifth Dragon Sea said with an unclear meaning. Hearing this, White Knight was about to respond. Your Majesty, I've only heard about this girl's extraordinary talent along the way. I've just heard that someone has challenged her to a battle. I'd like to ask for your Majesty's permission so that I can see the power that has triumphed over my Daiwo family. The fifth Dragon Sea said. Chapter 212, Chapter 212, Shocking the World with the Blue Luan, 2. Chapter 212, Shocking the World with the Blue Luan, 2. Seeing Baya and seeing her talent with his own eyes was the true purpose of this trip to the fifth Dragon Sea. Otherwise, as long as the Daiwo clan was not going to be exterminated, there was no need for someone like him to appear at all. After all, they were all old and mature existences that had passed away. Hearing that, Yu Qinyi suddenly understood that the fifth Dragon Sea had not come out to admit their guilt, but because they had been shocked by Baye's talent. Your Majesty, I can sense the aura of a few old men that I haven't seen in a long time. They are approaching the Qin residence. They must have been attracted by the aura that Ye'er's fire seed released just now. Jun Wuming quietly reported to Yu Qinyi. Oh. Yu Zhenzhen raised his brows slightly, and the way he looked at Baye changed slightly. His eyes seemed to brighten up a little, making Baye feel like he was about to be sold. Immediately after, Baye heard Yu Jianqian say in an extremely kind and almost child-coaxing voice, Ye'er, let the old general see it. Let's also show those old fogies who have gathered outside. That was what Yu Qinyi added in his heart. Because he could already be certain that the auras Jun Wuming had mentioned were definitely the auras of those arrogant old fellows hidden within the imperial city. Most of these people were Yu Qinyi, or rather, the old monsters who had been invited by the Tianqian dynasty countless times but refused to serve the dynasty. What made Yu Qinyi even more indignant was that not only did these old fogies refuse to join the dynasty, but they had also been using their auras to seduce Yu Zhekong ever since he revealed his talent. They had never revealed any traces of him. But there was actually movement today. Elder Jun, are you sure it's those old fogies? Yu Qinyi's cultivation level was too high for him to sense the presence of these people outside, so he did not suspect anything. That's right. To be honest with your Majesty, I also sensed the aura of the old principal. Jun Wuming said. In fact, he was also a little shocked by the momentum outside. And these existences had probably all come for the limitless dark flame. It was the mutated limitless dark flame. This son thinks that this is inappropriate. However, Yu Zhekong objected. Father said that this is a wedding hall. Yu Qinyi was speechless. He felt like he had shot himself in the foot. That's not a problem. The wedding hall is not the only piece of land in this official's residence. If the emperor permits it, this official suggests that we execute this thief at the drill ground in the residence. Qinban said empathetically. With his extraordinary cultivation, he could also sense the auras of many experts gathered outside his mansion. And he knew the purpose of these people. This is an opportunity for the little spirit lord. Qinbang knew very well that White Knight, who was still weak, needed such an opportunity to show off. Because if he could gain the favor of these people, or subdue them, that would be a great help to White Knight. Zhen will naturally approve. There was no reason for Yu Qinyi to disagree. At the same time, he gave Yu Zhekong a look that said, if you dare to say anything again, I won't let you off. However, Yu Zhekong didn't even look at him. Instead, he turned to look at Bayet. Seeing the latter nod, he didn't say anything. Qian. Yu Qinyi was at a loss for words. They had not even married yet, but he was already siding with his wife. After that, the place where Baya killed Qing Xiantian was moved to the Qin Manor's drill ground. In the eyes of everyone, it was normal for Qing Xiantian to be easily killed by Bayet. After all, Qing Suanation's cultivation was weaker than Baye's. Chapter 213, Chapter 213, Shocking the World with the Blue Luan, 3. Chapter 213, Shocking the World with the Blue Luan, 3. However, Baya did not underestimate his enemy at all, because she knew very well that Qing Xian Heaven was not a person who would obediently accept death. With the shift of the battlefield, what happened in the banquet hall had basically spread to the ears of the vast number of spectators. What? Dai Wukinga lost in a pill refining competition? How could that be? I just saw Grandmaster Yu enter the banquet hall. I heard that he is Miss Kinga's master. That's true. But even so, Miss Daiwo Kinga was already a level 2 alchemist, but she still lost. I lost to the future 9th princess consort, Miss Bayet. No, no, this is impossible. How could my goddess be defeated? And she was a level 2 alchemist. Miss Kinga is already a level 2 alchemist, how could she know how to do it? Believe it? Because Miss Bayet is a level 3 alchemist. Whoosh. Whoosh. Inside and outside the Qin Manor, and even the entire imperial city, was in an uproar after this news spread. As a result, large waves of people immediately gathered towards Qin Manor. There were also those who had received invitations but had no intention of appearing, afraid of offending the fifth family. They had already hurriedly hugged their invitations and rushed to the Qin Manor. In less than a quarter of an hour, the few streets where the Qin residence was located were completely packed. Those who were slow, even if they had an invitation, could not squeeze into the Qin residence. As long as the Qin residence wasn't required to be a difference guard, everyone had already gathered around the drill ground. Quickly look. Our Miss Bai is up? As Bai, who was dressed in a dark purple, golden imperial concubine robe, stepped onto the stage, the entire Qin Manor cried out in excitement. In particular, the servants of the Qin residence who had been fortunate enough to be on standby in the banquet hall earlier and had seen the entire process of the White Knight Pill battle were even more jubilant. Previously, because of the occasion, they didn't want to make a scene and had been trying their best to restrain themselves. It was really hard for them to hold it in. Now, he finally didn't have to endure anymore. Miss. Even though no one in the Qin residence knew Baya before today, Baya had used her talent as an expert. He had completely conquered them. To everyone in the Qin residence, Baya was the little master in their hearts, the eldest miss of the Qin residence. Xiao Ye'er, he. Seeing this scene, Jifu felt both relieved and bitter. I didn't really believe it when village chief told me about it, but it seems like Xiao Ye'er has really grown up. Not only is my cultivation base rising, but my way of dealing with people and ability to solve problems are no longer comparable to little Ye'er. The Qin clan's eldest great-grandfather softly sighed. Not bad, he. All the villagers of the Prajna village who had watched Baya grow up had surprise in their eyes. They were also emotional, but they could not bear to be surprised, because everyone knew what Baya had gone through. Today, old Bai's revenge shall be taken. As Jifu spoke, he looked at Qing Xiantian who was on the field. The rest of the Prajna villagers nodded. To them, their little Ye'er and Lao Bai were both extraordinary existences. Not good. Jifu, who was staring at Qing Xian heaven, suddenly exclaimed. Not only him. All the villagers of the Prajna village tensed up almost at the same time. Buzz. Qing Xiantian, who was on the field, had already exploded his aura from a second-grade mystical warrior to. Chapter 214, Chapter 214, Shocking the World with the Green Luan, 4. Chapter 214, Shocking the World with the Green Luan, 4. 5th grade mystical warrior. Boom! Qing Suanation's body was exuding a terrifying, beast-like aura at this moment. It's the aura of the Xian burst pill. Jifu immediately recognized that the change in Qing Xian heaven was caused by the elixir, the Xian explosion pill. Something's wrong. His aura was still rising. This is a mayfly. The Qin family's eldest great-grandfather narrowed his eyes and said sternly, not good, it's a level 4 mystic explosion pill. He's going to shapeshift. What? Jifu's voice changed, and he subconsciously wanted to stop this life and death battle. However, at that moment. Roar. Qing Xiantian, who was emitting a terrifying and ruthless aura, had already burst out a vivid tiger roar. Then, the sound of bang. As Qing Suanation's aura exploded, Baya, who was concentrating, saw a huge tiger with red eyes pouncing on her head. All these changes happened very quickly. Before many people could react, they already saw Baya's head about to be bitten off. Even Yu Zhekong's eyes narrowed. Miss Bai. Everyone in the Qin Manor could not help but exclaim in shock. They were all shocked by this scene. Everyone was shocked to see. The little girl, who looked like she would be bitten to death in one bite, used her bare hands to firmly hold the two fangs of the giant tiger the moment it pounced on her. A clear cracking sound was heard. Ka-cha ka-cha. The giant tiger's two fangs were instantly pulled out by White Knight. Woof. Whoosh. Two fountains of blood spurted out of the two teeth of the giant tiger. And what was spewing out was the giant tiger Qing Suanation's agonized cries. Boom boom. Baya, who had succeeded in one strike, emitted a layer of wuji. Dark flame around her body. One after another, punches that contained the wuji dark flame were greeted by her on Qing Suanation's body as if they were free. Bang, 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 the pitiful Qing Xiantian, Even if he took the risk of beast transformation, he still could not change the situation of being completely destroyed by White Knight. Gulp gulp gulp. The crowd watching the scene couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Because what Qing Xiantian swallowed was a level 4 mystic explosion pill that contained the level 2 berserk tiger pill. He now has the combat power of a rank 2 berserk tiger beast. Yao Kanglan said in disbelief. In addition to the explosive power of a beast, ordinary great mystic cultivators wouldn't dare to fight a level 2 berserk tiger beast head-on. But what about Bai Ye, a 4th grade mystical warrior? She directly took out their fangs on the spot, one with each hand. He even beat the other party up like he was beating a dog to death, leaving him with no way to fight back. This girl's body is so strong. Quan Qingmu was convinced on the spot. I'm afraid that his physical strength must be close to that of a half-step mystical king to be able to catch the fangs of a level 2 berserk tiger without being injured. What precise capture! The speed of the shape-shifted Qing Xian Heaven is much faster than an ordinary 2nd grade berserk tiger beast. She actually caught the other party's fangs in a short time. This was what Ho Wenchinj valued. This isn't even a big deal, he. What really excited Jun Wuming was, this child can actually grasp the weakness of Qing Xian Heaven under beast transformation. You must know that cultivators who take the Xian explosion pill not only have the explosive power of a beast, but their bodies can also be hidden in any part of the beast form. What? Everyone stood up in shock. Boom. There was a loud explosion on the field. Chapter 215, Chapter 215, Shocking the World with the Green Luan, 5. Chapter 215, Shocking the World with the Green Luan, 5. Everyone subconsciously looked over and saw dash. Buzz 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 buzz. The originally majestic giant mad tiger was like a balloon that had been deflated at this moment, and it returned to its original form with a whoosh. Gulp gulp gulp. Many people with lower cultivation and weaker self-control saw the scene and subconsciously gulped in fear, because at this time, Qing Xiantian had not only been beaten back to its original form, he was simply beaten back into a green pig head. Okay. If it were not for the fact that they had witnessed the entire battle, the crowd would never believe that the pig head that was lying on the drill ground exhaling more than he was breathing was actually Qing Xiantian, who had looked pretty good. Simply. It was beyond recognition. The most miserable thing was, Qing Xiantian was still coughing out blood. It could be seen that not only was his appearance beaten to a pig head, but his inner self was also completely abused. Some of the influential people with good hearing could even faintly hear the sound of bones cracking coming from Qing Xian's body. This is a good move, Quan Qingmu said as he gave a thumbs up. I always thought that the Ministry of Heavenly Troops was brutal enough in beating people up. I didn't expect this delicate Miss Bai to be even more skilled than us. I'm afraid all the bones in his body have been broken. The difficult thing is that he didn't die or faint. He's still alive and suffering from the pain. Yao Kanglan subconsciously wiped his cold sweat. He definitely wouldn't allow it. The way this little girl beat people actually made him feel a little scared. He even regretted that he had been too fair before. Why didn't he curry favor with her? Now that they had lost this opportunity, what if this girl hated Yu Fu in the future and implicated their heavenly hospital? Things aren't looking good, Yingluo. No wonder my 5th house lost. After watching the one-sided battle, the 5th Dragon C, who had been a little unconvinced, was completely convinced. He knew that no matter if it was in terms of fire seed, talent, or means, the potential that the girl in front of him had shown was far more valuable than his 5th family. That's right, not Daiwo Kinga. It was the 5th shop. This old minister is sincerely convinced. Dai Wulonghai rose to his feet and looked at Yu Qinyi. He knelt down again and said, Congratulations, Your Majesty, for finding a good wife for the 9th prince. Ha 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 beloved, please rise. Yu Qinyi, who was dazzled by Bai Ye's storm of pear blossoms, could not help but laugh heartily. Congratulations, Your Majesty, congratulations, 9th Highness. Congratulations, Miss Bai. One after another, congratulatory words came out from the seats of the dignitaries and from the surroundings of the drill ground. These sounds of joy were first chaotic, but then they all tacitly gathered together, causing the people inside and outside the Qin Manor, as well as the people around the streets of the Qin Manor, to all congratulate in unison. For a moment, the entire imperial city could clearly hear the congratulatory words. Miss Bai is mighty. At that moment, after the entire Qin residents congratulated him, they cheered Bai Ye's name. Every single one of their cheers was filled with respect for Bai Ye. At that moment, only then did Bai Ye have a faint feeling that she was finally walking on the path of an expert. This feeling. Before Bai Ye could feel it carefully, Qing Xiantian, which was clearly lying dead on the ground, suddenly shot a strange blood light at her. The blood light. Ye-er. Bai Ye's vision blurred, and she could only hear Yu Zhekong's panicked voice from all around her, but she couldn't hear it in time. Chapter 216, Chapter 216, The Shocking Green Lewin, 6. Chapter 216, The Shocking Green Lewin, 6. This was because she could sense a life-threatening danger from Baya at this moment. And this crisis came from the blood-red light that was shooting at her. It was a swan and poison. In that instant, Baya was shocked by the terrifying deathly energy contained in this blood-red light. She had no doubt that once she was infected, she would definitely die. Dead. How could this be? Baya was a person who had been reborn. She valued life more than she realized. How could she be willing to die like this? However, just as she was thinking clearly about what was coming for her, the poisonous light had already arrived. It was a ball of malevolent, dark green venomous eyes, a venomous bug. Whoosh. In an instant, the venomous insect with the blood-red light turned into a mist with a heavy smell of blood. Before anyone could react, they saw White Knight disappear, enveloped in a bloody mist. What's going on with Wufu? However, it was also at this moment that Han Yu firmly held down Yu Zhekong, who was supposed to appear in front of Bayet. Han Yu had no choice but to do this, because he could tell at a glance that the little bug that had flashed out was the 9 abyss poisonous bug. It was a poisonous insect that even he could not resist. Han Yu quickly realized that something was wrong, because his Imperial 9 tribulations were already starting to fall apart. Yu Zhekong himself was already right in front of the blood mist. Junior brother Yu. Han Qiu's heart skipped a beat as she looked up at the scene. She saw that Yu Zhekong's hand was already fearlessly piercing into the poisonous blood mist. However, it was also at this moment. 9 levels. Jun Wuming was already holding onto Yu Zhekong's hand. Let go. Yu Zhekong's voice was hoarse, like a wild beast that was about to go berserk. Calm down, you can't do anything like this. Jun Wuming also recognized this type of 9 abyss venomous bug, and he knew that even Yu Zhekong would most likely die if he were to be infected by the 9 abyss venomous bug's predator miasma. Yu Zhekong was the hope of the Tianqian dynasty. He couldn't be in trouble. Let go. Yu Zhekong didn't listen at all. He only knew that if he didn't split the blood mist apart, he wouldn't be able to see the little one again. The little one who obviously had a lot of opinions about him, but had no choice but to swallow his anger because he was not as powerful as him. The little one who was very confident and determined to be stronger than him within 5 years, the one who was out of his control. That Yingluo. Let go. Yu Zhekong looked up, his eyes were blood red. It was like a demon. However, there was a godlike crushing pressure that crushed Jun Wuming's mind in an instant. This caused Jun Wuming's Xianqi to relax, and the force blocking Yu Zhekong's attack was also released. No one could stop the 9 heavens. At this moment, Qing Xiantian, who had succeeded, was already on the ground laughing in a strange way. He couldn't wait for Yu Zhekong to make his move. Wisps of green smoke suddenly rose from the blood mist that was surrounding Bayet. Yu Zhekong's eyes narrowed as he stared at the wisps of smoke. He could sense Bayet's unique aura from them. The clanging cry of a phoenix broke out from the terrifying blood mist. Everyone could clearly see swish dash. A corporeal blue Lewin, covered in demonic white flames, had already soared into the sky from the ball of blood. Chapter 217, Chapter 217, Shocking the World with the Green Lewin, 7. Chapter 217, Shocking the World with the Green Lewin, 7. There was a raging green smoke that was like a raging wave. Boom. With a single strike, it crushed the layer of blood mist. And White Knight. At this moment, like a butterfly that had broken out of its cocoon, it spread its wings and flew out of the blood ball. Almost at the same time, everyone present was shocked by the rich spiritual chi that hit their faces. He was even more shocked by White Knight, who had broken out of his cocoon. White Knight, who had broken out of the cocoon, was emitting a spiritual green light. Then, a lifelike green Lewin rose into the sky behind her. He was also accompanied by a layer of red limitless dark flame. Even if a phoenix reincarnates from nirvana, it's only so much. At this moment, everyone who saw White Knight had the same thought. Gorgeous. His pride was indescribable. At this moment, Jifu and the other people of the Prajna village almost knelt down to reveal their identity to Bayet. Because when the spiritual chi tide triggered by White Knight surged towards them, their blood vessels also trembled. There were also wisps of strange power that were already stirring in their bodies. They knew very well what this power represented. It represented that their spirit lord had already awoken for the second time the power of the Bai family bloodline. Second awakening. This was the second awakening. 3 times, as long as the spirit lord can complete the third awakening. My spirit lineage will be able to recover. When Jifu and the others thought of this, they were so excited that they wanted to cry. That was because Shiroya was only 15. Furthermore, it had only been less than half a year since she last awakened her bloodline power, and she had awakened it again. Would the third time be far away? Village chief, You're right. Xiao Ye'er is really unusual. The Qin eldest great-grandfather's aged hands were already tightly clenched together like chicken claws. Because he was holding it too tightly, the veins on the back of his hand were jumping out of excitement. I'm really excited. At this time, Yao Kanglin and the others also recognized that the layer of blood mist was actually the predator poisonous mist scattered by the 9 abyss poisonous insects. But White Knight could actually break out of the miasma. And in such a short time, he broke out of the miasma by himself. This was simply inconceivable. However, when they thought about the world-shocking shocks that White Knight had brought, everyone felt that it was only natural. After all, she was a world-shocking little girl. However, Qing Xiantian, who was on the verge of death, could not accept it naturally. He did not believe that White Knight would be fine. He didn't believe it. That was why he tried to open his swollen eyes wide to see if White Knight, who had broken out of his cocoon, was actually a person who was about to die. But, no. Qing Xian Heaven looked around, all it saw was a White Knight that could not be any livelier. Not only was she fine, but her life force seemed to be even more vigorous. How could it be like this? Qing Xiantian wished that he had been blinded just now, so that he would not be able to see Baiye in perfect condition and even become a better scene. In fact, even Baiye himself was still a little confused. He did not know why he was like this. But she didn't have time to carefully examine the changes in her body. She had just stabilized her aura. She was tightly held. She was hugging someone she was familiar with tightly. Chapter 218, Chapter 218, Chapter 218, The Scumbag Dies. Chapter 218, Chapter 218, The Scumbag Dies. Ye'er. Yu Zhekong's voice was hoarse. Even Baiye could not recognize him for a moment. If it was not for this fellow's aura and her clear memory, she would have suspected that the person hugging her was not him. This fellow is hugging me too tightly. And it was getting tighter and tighter. It was so tight that even the current Baiye had the illusion that she was going to be crushed in the arms of a certain prince, because at this time, she only felt that all the bones in her body were in pain from his strangling. He. Baiye could not take it anymore and snorted. He instinctively wanted to struggle. However, her struggle only resulted in a tighter hug. Baiye, Wan, she really felt that she couldn't hold on any longer. The Bai Clan Heart Sutra that she cultivated even instinctively activated to protect her master. The profound qi in her body quickly gathered and was about to burst out of her body. Yu Zhekong, who was hugging her tightly, suddenly grabbed her by the side of her jaw and kissed her hard. This kiss was so impetuous, like a storm, smashing it into pain. Imperial Cicadas, White Knight, was baffled by the smash, and because he realized that there were many people watching, he naturally had to push Imperial ninefold. This time, the bean-sized storm instantly turned into a hurricane storm, sweeping Baiye to the point where he threw away his armor, almost suspecting that he was going to be swallowed alive. And this scene. In the eyes of the half-dead Qing Xiantian, it was simply a talisman to hasten his death. He was so angry that he instantly vomited blood. How could he have expected that the original dead couple not only didn't die, but they even directly showed off their love? Qing Xiantian, who was already heavily injured and on the verge of death, could not even catch his breath. He died with a pair of swollen slit eyes. Before he held his breath, he was still unwilling. And the one who was not much different from him was naturally the half-dead Daiwo Kinga. Perhaps in order to make the fifth family completely convinced, she was lucky to witness this scene. Daiwo Kinga spat out a mouthful of blood when she saw Yu Zhekong's nonchalant attitude towards Baiye. She was confident that she wasn't bad in any way. At this point, even if Daiwo Kinga wanted to deceive herself, she had no other way. After all, everyone knew that the ninth prince never got close to women. However, he could not help but kiss his fiancée, Qian, in front of everyone. What did this mean? This meant that the ninth Wanjai had really taken a fancy to the little girl. It was not because of talent, not because of exploitation, etc. This was pure love between a man and a woman. Daiwo Kinga only felt that the scene was extremely eye-piercing. It also made her look extremely stupid. It was laughable that she had always thought that Baiye was chosen because of her talent, and that the royal family needed descendants with better bloodlines. That was why she felt that as long as she Daiwo Kinga won against White Knight, she would achieve her wish. Everything was a joke. In fact, Daiwo Kinga had already sensed it when Yu Zhekong had been so protective of Baiye. However, she was still too proud to admit it. Papa. At this moment, there were already a few claps that sounded rather lonely. Shadows scattered from the sky above the Qin manor. Little girl, your spiritual energy is so strong. The imperial family is so blessed. It's a pity that such a good little cabbage has been dug out before it even grows. Chapter 219, Chapter 219, The Four Elders of Tianxian. Chapter 219, The Four Elders of Tianxian. There were also a few unkind comments that spread out so willfully that the dignitaries present wished they could turn deaf. Bai Ye, who had just been released by Yu Zhekong and had just caught his breath, was speechless when he heard this teasing. However, Yu Zhekong was so shameless that he lowered his head and pecked him on the lips again, as if he was treating the Qin Manor's drill ground as his home. Bai Ye wanted to give him a slap, but before he could do so, she couldn't bear to. Not for any other reason. This was because Yu Zhekong was looking at him as if he was some kind of dog that had been abandoned by its owner. Ye Zhenzhen didn't even need to mention his raspy and soul-stirring voice. Bai Ye, Yingluo. She admitted defeat. The moment she softened her attitude, Yu Zhekong was insatiable, but he stopped kissing her. He bent down and pressed his forehead against hers affectionately, then hugged her tightly. Ahem, 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 ahem. The two kids were acting all lovey-dovey and completely disregarded the hundreds of people present. Yu Qinyi had no choice but to awkwardly cough in warning. Cough, cough, cough. Bai Ye, who was sensitive enough to hear this sound, wanted to push Yu Zhu away, but he refused to let go, as if he was afraid that she would fly away. Yu Zhekong was really starting to get a little scared. 9 Abyss Venomous Bug. When he saw the predator poisonous miasma covering Bai Ye, he thought that he would never see her again. Even if he tried his best to tear open the layer of poisonous miasma, no one knew that he was so scared at that time. He was afraid that he would tear out a bloody mess of flesh and blood. When he thought of this, Yu Zhekong hugged Bai Ye even tighter. Bai Ye was in pain from the strangulation, but he gradually understood Yu Zhekong's lingering fear. He subconsciously comforted him softly, I'm fine, aren't I? Quickly let go of me. Yu Zhekong didn't say a word. He wrapped his arms around Bai Ye's thin and soft waist and said rather viciously, I won't let you take risks next time. Hiss. Bai Ye gasped in pain. He could not help but rejoice that his physical body was strong enough. Otherwise, his waist would have been broken. This force was simply too much. However, Yu Zhekong let go of Bai Ye's hand this time, but he still held onto it tightly. When he turned back to look at Qing Suanation's corpse, Yu Zhekong's eyes were filled with a dark desire to tear the corpse apart. Unfortunately, he was interrupted before he could put his idea into practice. Tisk. This little girl's appearance is also good, just right to refine medicine with this old man. An old man in a yellow robe suddenly appeared in front of Bai Ye and said, refining medicine can be eaten as a meal. Another old man in a blue coarse cloth shirt also surrounded Bai Ye. In fact, there were 4 of them. They were like bamboo shoots that popped out of the ground. They surrounded Bai Ye and Yu Zhekong, and all of them were staring at Bai Ye. As soon as the 4 old men appeared, Yu Qinyi was so excited that he almost stood up. However, due to his noble status, he could only continue to sit there. He felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles and could only hurriedly give Jun Wuming a look. Ahem, ahem, ahem. Jun Wuming coughed lightly after being entrusted with such a great task. He then bowed respectfully and said, Junior Wuming greets the 4 elders of heaven, earth, black, and yellow. The words fell. Countless influential people in the hall stood up in excitement. Tian Wang, Tian Wang, Tian Wang, Tian Wang, the 4 Xian elders. Oh my god, I'm so lucky to see you. The Minister of War, Quan King Muo, felt difficulty breathing. Part 4 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.